the Beltrami County Work Meeting to order. This item is the introduction of new employees. Okay, we will move on to identify future work in this topic. I'd like to suggest that we have a finance insurance CEO, Jim, here to discuss grants given in that already. The answer to that is more than that. Jim, would you spell that? All right, well, if there are no others, we will continue on to the housing needs and opportunities. We will call on the chairman, please.
Yes, certainly. And then when a presentation got sent to you guys for inclusion that was missing a slide, or we had some a slide we didn't complete or something like that. So I'm not sure how that happened, but that was the front version. So my name is Nikki Miller, and the Housing and Community Development for HRDC.
Family by heart, I do a lot of single family rehabilitation, down payment assistance, and our home credit.
So we will just kind of go over some general information on housing in the county first, and then we'll talk a little bit about what HRDC is doing for the project, and then we'll finish up with a little bit of info about the needs and opportunities. So HRDC has a nonprofit subsidiary. It's also called the Hillary Housing Development Corporation, and that's who a lot of our housing work is done through. But we also do some through HRDC directly. So the current situation in Beltrami County, kind of the most recent data that we have right now is from 2021. So most of it is coming from that. There are a couple things that are from 2019, so it's pretty up to date. So right now, Beltrami County has around 17,000 households. 33% are renting and 67% are homeowners. From 2000 to 2019, median rent increased by 25%, while median income for renters actually decreased by about 5%. This is an issue, of course, because it forces more families to have to choose between paying their rent and meeting their basic needs. There's a significant gap in affordable housing units. So in 2021, about 1,600, almost 1,700 families were identified as extremely low income. 710 units of supportive housing or affordable housing were available in the county. This means that there's a gap of about 970 affordable housing units that is still needed to be built in our county in order to keep up with demand. And that's just for extremely low income families. That's not counting, median income families who are also struggling to pay their rent. Right now, approximately 25% of renters are paying more than the recommended amount for the rent, which is about 30% of income. So during the same year, 2000 and 2019, for homeowners, it also became more difficult to afford their homes. Well, home values increased by about 48%, while incomes for homeowners only increased by about 10%. So this is making it much more challenging for young families and people who move into the area to purchase a home, and for people who already own their home to continue to live in it affordably. Additionally, of the homes that we have in Beltrami County, about 30% were built prior to 1970. So now they are aging and in need of repairs and updates in order to be in productive use still. If we don't begin making more of these repairs, we're going to have more homes falling into this repair and more families will be displaced. Anecdotally, in the area, service providers are reporting that they have a really difficult time finding housing for people. I've heard the number 1% thrown around for a vacancy rate. I don't have that data to back that up, but that seems to be what service providers are reporting in terms of vacancy. So across the board, from renters, affordable housing to homeowners, everything is in shortage. So we just need more housing across the board. And that's not just here in Beltrami County. Across the state, they're saying that we need approximately 300,000 more homes in the next 8 years in order to keep up with housing demand. So we're not alone in the struggle, but we definitely have significant needs here in the county.
So before we move on to the next slide, what is considered affordable housing? You talk about low income, medium income. So looking at ads, the sports fans are advertising their houses for 2 bedrooms for nearly $1,000. Is that affordable?
So they recommend, being kind of the Northeast housing experts, I guess. It's recommended that no more than 30% of a family's income go towards their housing costs. So if rent is 30%, or if rent is $1,000, they would need to be making more than $3,000 a month. I mean, that $3,000 would be after taxes in order for that to be about 30%. And that's of course not including utilities and all sorts of costs that also go into your home costs. So I can't do the math off the top of my head, but I'm not sure what that is for an annual wage. But I mean, a lot of families in this county are not making that. We have some of the highest poverty rates in the state. So I would say that $1,000 a month for a 2-bedroom is not considered affordable.
And then another question there, I looked at my emails and I got an email from the state in regards to the home health MN. I believe there's some housing, some financial assistance available. Are you pushing that program or folks know about that there are assistance available?
So there is some assistance available. Most assistance is fairly short term. The home health is similar to the rent health amendment that came out last year and kind of ended in March, I believe. So it was a short term, one-time kind of payment to help people catch back up after so many people lost income about the time during the pandemic. So the home health, I believe, is going to be pretty focused on these one-time payments to help people get caught back up. It's not going to be ongoing assistance. Rent health was for renters specifically. Home health is now for homeowners specifically. So there is some assistance available, but there's not really enough to go around, and it's not a long-term solution to affordability.
As Nikki said, one of the problems is we have a lot of aging housing stock. And I spend a lot of my time working with low income households to repair homes that they have. This is specifically for low to very low income households in Beltrami County. People who don't have the means to acquire traditional financing through a bank, those kind of things. We're kind of a last resort lifeline for some of these people that if they aren't able to get to the help, they would either their homes have fallen into a state of disrepair where they're not able to live there anymore. And then, the house may be to the point where it may need to be tore down or whatever that may be. So the one that I spend the majority of my time on is done through Minnesota Housing. It's for the low income households, and it's to make those eligible repairs to their homes. Anything that affects the safety, habitability, or energy efficiency of the home. The rehab loan, good news that we got about a year ago is after years and years, we increased the amount of funding for the program from 27,000 to 37,500. I found that to be an immediate impact. As Minnesota Housing knew that was a challenge. With today's prices on materials and turnaround times, and all these kind of things, it's definitely helped in that regard. Just as an example, we had and it's another specific to this program. They are able to do mobile homes, which is just for this product. A lot of them don't have that, so it's a great one for that. And it's in the form of forgivable loan, I should say, for these households. They don't have to make a monthly payment. We had a person we were helping who got an eviction notice for their mobile home. We were in the process of helping them out, and we were able to forego that eviction. More than likely, what would have happened is they would have lost the home. The homeowner could probably got tore down, and we would have lost that for that person. We're able to get the max. They're currently working on the project, and we're able to save that, so that person's going to be able to stay in that home for the foreseeable future. We also have an emergency accessibility loan with that. If they have emergency repairs, a lot of times it's things like roofs, their septic goes out, their well, those kind of things. So that is another fund you can have. Additionally, you offer a fix-up loan that's done through area lenders, including us. That is also an option for some of those households. They can afford a small payment for some of those repairs. And also in Beltrami County, we have our small city development program. We currently have one running for the 12th Northwest 12th Street area, kind of in the Dave's Pizza, kind of west and south of that area. And that's a forgivable loan also that we're working on for area households. It's also a forgivable loan program. Additionally, I do run the home buyer education class. Another thing we can do is help the households that are trying to buy a home become educated. Help them make the right decisions. You know, we talk about that affordability, make sure they're preparing a budget, knowing what they're buying, make sure they can afford the payment, so they become productive and successful homeowners. That's an 8-hour class. Typically, we've been doing it over 2 nights. And that's been a great program to help some of these potential homeowners. Additionally, the Beltrami County HRA does offer down payment assistance for households in Beltrami County. There's a couple different ones. The Beltrami County HRA does offer a program of $7,500. Can be used for down payment and or closing costs. There are some income guidelines for that program. Our goal is to help the people who need the assistance for the program to help them close that gap if we can't quite afford some of those closing costs or down payment. Depending on location, if they don't qualify for the $7,500, we do have an option for $5,000 through our other HHBC, a little more generous income guidelines for that. So, just a couple of the programs that I have, but otherwise, any questions, I'll turn it back over to you.
Levi, how do you, the people in the community, is it just through the bankers and stuff that they find out about these programs, or how do they find out about some of these programs to help them?
A lot of word of mouth. We work with USDA, local banks, organizations, BICAP. We all kind of know each other. We know the program. There's really no specific advertising that I do for it. Because there is that need and there's always, you know, loans and things to be done. So, you know, we talk with the, you know, all our counties, all our partners, you know, and that definitely keeps it busy. So,
How about the education piece of it, the Northwest Tech or VSU or the high school, any of those have any information so that, you know, young adults could?
that's something we work with a lot of with the down payment assistance and the home stretch. That's a lot with the area banks and lending institutions. They're the first ones to know these people that are looking. A lot of times they need the class to be able to buy the home. We'll get them that way. But we have reached out two other area organizations periodically. We've reached out to Red Lake Housing. Trying to think some of the other ones. In the past, yeah, we've reached out to BSU, just to let them know we have an ongoing list of people that we send out monthly. That we have the upcoming classes, all those contacts, but I do that monthly, and we also advertise in the paper.
I'm saying, in some cases, they want to start even earlier, like I started both my boys on prepaid credit cards, so start getting them used up, getting a credit card, paying it off, so they build the credit rating, and then, just educating them on how to, that they have to have typically a couple of years worth of work history in the same type of field, and if they're planning on getting into actual home ownership, and some of that stuff, they get to the point of where they think they want to buy a home and then find out, oh, I've been job hopping, I'm not gonna be able to qualify, or.
That's, yeah, it's done through the Minnesota Home Ownership Center, and that's one thing they've been pushing, is to get people into the class earlier in the process. So they are able to save and make those decisions to buy a home, and not kind of after the fact kind of thing. So that's something they could have been pushing and kind of guiding us to help, find those people ahead of time to take the class. So you're right on track with that.
Thanks.
So a couple of the development pieces that HRDC is doing. We do some single family housing. So we've got basically three options that we use right now. The first one is just acquiring a home that needs a little bit of work, doing some rehab, updating some things, and then either selling or renting it out. Mostly selling is what we've been doing, but we have done a few rentals. We also utilize the MHFA, the Minnesota Housing Finance Agency's impact fund, and that allows us to build between 1 and 4 single family homes per year in our region. Historically, it has been where we have to find a location first and then apply for the funding and build a home there. Recently, we were able to start switching it to a regional option, so we can just apply for our whole region and then find a city that has lots available, and we can select a location after that. So we currently have 2 homes that are just about complete in that program, and then we have 2 more that we will be getting started in the near future. One of which will for sure be in both this year. We also partner with the Navy High School and SVC to develop 1 to 2 single family homes per year. It's been 1 per year recently. And basically with that program, we have the teacher at the high school, Tony Hall, she does a fantastic job with the students. They get to come in and actually build a home, be part of it from start to finish. They learn skills, they learn the trade, so they are more employable if construction is a field that they want to go into after school. But also it's just good skill for them to kind of have the business. And then they get to see the impact of selling a house just to a low to median income person in our community. So that's a really fantastic program. DHS has been on it for 25 years, 30 years, a very long time. NTC used to be part of it. They did drop back for a little while, and now this year again, they are going to be getting started. So they will be providing the electrical and plumbing and HVAC work in the homes going forward. I think that they have in the past done the houses. I don't know if they still are. They're not doing it through us.
Oh, okay.
So I'm not sure what the status of their program. We are hoping to expand it. It is hugely successful here, and one of the issues with both doing rehab on homes and building new homes is that there are a limited number of contractors and construction employees right now. So we would love to expand this program to other school districts because it is so successful. So we also do multifamily development. So this is the side that wasn't totally done. So you're gonna have to look in your packet, and I apologize for that. So we have been doing multifamily development for just over 10 years now. With Conifer Estates being the first Conifer project that we completed and was finished in 2012. That one was built using housing infrastructure bonds. Sorry for the small print.
You put the hand up, magnifying glass. These aren't big. What language was that in?
That's just like a web designer thing. I don't know, they have some fake Latin that they use. It doesn't mean anything.
I found it at the back of it.
Yeah. So Conifer Estates has 20 units of supportive housing. Supportive housing is an affordable housing model where not only do tenants have access to rental support, but they also have space to manage it, to help them learn how to be a successful renter, a tenant, how to live in a community, and how to work on their life skills and goals. So at Conifer Estates, we have Red Lake Housing, Beach Lake Housing, 5 and Section 8 for kind of all of the supportive services and rental supports there. Then we built Conifer Villas, which is a 32-unit supportive housing, also on the Conifer campus. That opened in 2021. It was a more complicated project because we did use low-income housing tax credits, which are a real nightmare. So the housing infrastructure bonds turn out to be a much better way to build housing. But at Conifer Villas, we do have Housing Matters, which has peace management, and then they also utilize Beltrami County housing supports for the rental system. And then we also have Red Lake Housing Infection. So now we are finishing up East Conifer Estates, also on the Conifer campus. That is 24 units of supportive housing. That will be opening for tenants to move in on December 1st. So it's just about complete. That one, we went back to the housing infrastructure bonds, and we will have Housing Matters again with the Beltrami County housing support funding for the rental assistance, and then Red Lake Housing Infection. So we've got kind of this campus that is being hugely successful with the supportive housing model. We have some additional units nearby, so there is a potential for continuing that construction in the future. It will just be a matter of developing the plan and applying for more of the funding to complete that construction.
Wasn't there supposed to be like a central, like, I want to say childcare or something like that? And that wasn't able to be done right now, but is that something we're looking to do in the future?
Yes, so part of the supportive services model is attempting to have as many on-site services as possible. So we do have community spaces at 2 of the locations at the state and village. They have spaces where service providers can come and meet with the tenants. Tenants can actually utilize the space for like family gatherings and different things like that. But what we did want was that child care center, and yes, that was value engineered out, and then the expenses as part of the project as we were building. It is something that we kind of maintain on our internal list of if anybody sees funding for it, how can we try to bring that back in? So HRDC also provides the staff support for Beltrami County Housing and Development Authority. So unlike the Bemidji HRA, the Beltrami HRA does not have vouchers. So those come strictly from the Bemidji HRA. But Beltrami County HRA does have a variety of things that they try to be a part of. So they are able to be the public owner for a lot of these developments. So they were able to be a public owner for Village of Hope, the family shelter in town. They own Conifer Estates. And then they have 2 transitional housing properties. They used to have more of 2 transitional housing properties, but as they have aged out of the loans, we have transferred the ownership to BICAP, who is currently managing them all. We also currently have 4 rental properties in the county. We may not continue doing single family rental properties. The HRA is looking at refocusing on multifamily development because the housing need is so great. They don't feel that maintaining these small single family rentals is having the biggest impact. So they are looking at kind of refocusing on multi-family developments like the Concord campus.
So what would happen to the single family? And what
We
other options would they have?
will be selling the houses, so we're planning to sell 2 of them. We'll likely maintain 1 or 2 of them, but they would be sold, so unfortunately, the tenants that are currently in them, I mean, if they can afford to purchase the home, we would give them the first option to do so. More than likely, they won't be able to, they will have to move, and a new family will purchase it their own. So we won't be losing the housing as a community, but it will not be rental property.
And
Or-
so you're working with those renters to give them notice and to help them find a house.
Yes, the HRA just decided that their meeting last week that they would go forward with selling 2 homes. The tenants that are currently in the homes will be given ample notice. They'll be told before anything is listed, that the house is going to be sold, and then they will be given as much notice as possible before having to move out. And the HRA is committed to, making sure that they are, once they move out, they're refunded their full deposit, and at least 1 month's rent. If not more, but they've committed to that. So the goal is to be as gentle as possible, with revisions as well.
And I mean, add to this, we'll give them the first opportunity to purchase, and included in that could be accessing the down payment assistance for Beltrami and becoming the greatest part of that. You know, do everything we can to try and keep them in the. Before we would, move on.
So a couple things that you should know about Beltrami County, that they are, an option for grant and funding opportunities for development. They are very used to being a public owner, and then just kind of allowing the development to be done, and then just providing whatever resources they can. So the Beltrami HRA actually owned all of the land for campus was built on, and so it's thanks to them that we were able to build that campus. However, they do need some additional revenue. They have utilized a lot of their capacity so far, and Beltrami County used to provide a stipend to the HRA. In place of the stipend, the HRA became the bond holder. I'm not entirely sure how the bond situation worked, but they were getting funding through a bond that the county had put out, and now that has ended, and so the HRA is not receiving any support from Beltrami County at this point. So in order to increase their capacity and continue the development work that they have been a part of, they're going to need some additional funding. So that is something that ideally the county will consider as they're looking at budgets in the next couple of years, to provide that support so that the HRA can continue to function. And then, as I'm sure many in the community here are aware, the HRA is currently looking at if there's an option for purchasing the Ridgeway properties that are currently for sale. So we are in the midst of trying to identify all the funding sources and partners, and what could potentially happen there. So other needs and opportunities we just wanted to briefly touch on. We did just recently as in yesterday, submitted the Ridgeway placemaking grant. Obviously, everyone is aware that Ridgeway is a neighborhood to benefit by some significant supports coming in and adding to the work that's already being done there. And so the HRDC partnered with a number of organizations, including the Village of Hope and Rotary, and the groups that are already kind of doing that work there. They submit a grant for some additional USDA funding to work on that area, and it would be in conjunction with the potential purchase we have of that property and some grant dollars that we found that can help with Skyline Village infrastructure. There was kind of some focus on that area right now. You should also be aware that MHFA started an emerging developers initiative. Um, they have, a consultant who has been hired to help emerging developers, particularly emerging developers of color, learn what it takes to develop housing. The HFBC has discussed with them some options in terms of bringing someone on into our development process to help them learn. So ideally, over the next few years, some more developers will come on board, because there's just not enough people doing that work right now to keep up with it. More development, of course, is needed across all levels. So we need more market rate housing, we need more workforce housing, mixed income, apartments, which means that there's affordable units, there's subsidies available, and then market rate, and it's all in one space. Supportive units are needed, and then transitional housing. There's a lot of people who are coming out of places like treatment or just kind of different institutional situations, and then who have been homeless or have different areas where they need some transitional support to help them get back on their feet. So really, across the board, any development at this point is good and needed. And then we are also looking at sustainable building techniques. We've been working with each tribal college to kind of brainstorm some ideas and what could be utilized in future developments to make the developments more sustainable and more resilient over the years. And then I know Becky's going to talk about the homeless prevention aid services, so I won't go into that, but we have been working with Becky and her team to kind of brainstorm some ideas. And we are ready if collaboration is needed going forward.
I've been working on and designing and administering affordable housing for 40 years in the industry. Some key things that people that want to advocate to improve the situation. 40 years ago, we used to get a design manual that was about this thick. And it says, make sure you have it insulated well, make sure they're dry, make sure the windows are good, make sure the flooring is good. And now the last one I did came out at $200,000 a unit. So if you do simple math, $200,000 a unit for a 30-year mortgage translates to about a $580 a month principal payment. That doesn't include insurance or taxes or any of that sort of thing. So if we're going to advocate for affordable housing, I really encourage everybody to start in St. Paul and Washington, D.C. because the design manual that I worked with on Conifer Village was that thick. And they've got into everything from solar panels to future solar installation to, and I'm not against any of it, but if you want to put a roof over someone's head, go to St. Paul, go to DC, and advocate for good, well insulated, dry, easy to maintain, affordable housing. While we were doing the $200,000 unit here, we're also doing some 1 and 2 and 3 bedroom affordable housing units that we're building for less than half of that and getting more housing units. So there's a real key equation there. Getting the government oversight, getting the regulations, getting the tax credit, because now if we're talking about folks that need help paying rent, then what you have to do is you have to offer it to people that have money to say, hey, if you throw your money into this, we'll develop housing units and we'll give you a tax credit to make that happen. So you have to incentivize that in order to get affordable housing to make that whole engine work. So advocate in St. Paul for to grow the tax credit program, advocate to try to trim down and streamline the regulations, the government oversight. You all said it. Trying to follow all their paths and their rules and all of that stuff. It's just onerous, and it takes huge amounts of time. So I could talk like a lot of other folks say when they're passionate about something or have a lot of knowledge. I could literally talk for 3 or 4 hours about how to improve the low income supportive Section 8. I've been in every one of the types of units.
tax credits, St. Paul, Washington DC. Advocate for some of those things and get those design manuals from that down, back down for that. Thank you.
Just to clarify, low income housing tax credits are far more onerous than housing infrastructure bonds. If you're advocating for one of them, I would suggest the housing infrastructure bonds. There, I think more funding is needed across the board, but from a long-term user standpoint, from the standpoint of the service providers, the reporting requirements, I think that the housing infrastructure bonds are far easier to work with. Than the ones with
Yeah,
tax credits.
I agree with you 100%. I'll change what I just said when I said tax credit. Change it to the incentivization of how to get money into that system to help subsidize, so to speak, and how to fund all of that. So it's not necessarily tax credit, but my intent with that statement was to encourage people with money to invest in them, to assist in getting us more affordable housing. And not just taxpayers, right? There's the difference is get it off of the taxpayers back and get it into people that want to invest their money and create housing for people. Because they do care too. It's not just about money, but they can care and invest their money. I deal with those folks all the time. They have 2 or 3 or 4 financial people on every housing project that we have. And they're covering everybody's interest of who's got some money into the pool to build the amount of money you need to build the project.
Thank you, and I like the presentation. And I'll take the vote. I think we will move on to the homeless.
That's the handouts for everybody. Thank you, Secor, Director of Health and Human Services. Thanks for allowing me to talk a little bit about something I don't know a ton about. A few months ago, we were just given some information that Beltrami County is going to be the recipient of some new dollars. They're called the Homeless Prevention Grant Dollars. And that money will start coming to us in 2023, so it's coming fairly quickly. And we have visited with several of our partner agencies about what this means and what it looks like. In a nutshell, it's to prevent homelessness of children and families. So the numbers actually come from the Department of Education and are based on reports from our homeless liaison to the state. So we obviously came out pretty high in that need. We are recipients of $710,746 in 2023. That will continue for 5 years, but the number could change over that 5-year period. So that allocation will be redistributed every year based on those reports from the Department of Education.
So this one here highlighted,
That's what will be recipients of the first year.
and then the following year it could be the same or
Could be different, could be more, could be less. Actually, the first time I heard about this number, it's supposed to be $920,000. So it went down, the legislation, reduced the amount that was going to be allocated. There is $20 million allocated every year, but 5 years. So as we know right now, when I originally heard about it, there would be very few restrictions on what the money could be used for, and how it could be used. Over time with conversations, we're still all a little sketchy about what the actual use can be for, but what we've heard is basically it can be used for rental assistance for up to 24 months, and it can be used for case management services to help people find homes. One of the things we talked about around all the tables is the issue here is there's not enough inventory. We have a lot of housing safe managers in different settings across the community, and the issue that they face is that they can't find the space for people to rent. In fact, Beltrami County already has the emergency assistance funding available. We hardly spend any of it because one of the requirements is that you have to have a place to rent to get the money. So we basically have these gray areas that we can't fill the gap. So we have talked with partners about could be creative with how we use the 24 months of rental assistance and find a developer that would be willing to partner with us if we do that funding into that developer. So those are things we've had conversations about. But we do know that we want to serve the young people and families. And we want to work and collaborate with our partners around the community. And we, as county health and human services, are now housing experts. So we do want to work with partners that are good at doing that work. And we're looking for project partners along the way. I wanted to fill you in on this basic information. I don't have a lot more than that. I have been in touch with state partners, trying to find out if there's any wiggle room around those two programs that we're supposed to define, and if we can be a little creative with how we use those dollars. Otherwise, we will still work with partners on the assistance with the 24 months of rental assistance and identifying those kids in school. I also have a list of projects. The project can be administered by several different partners, county, group of counties, the city, group of continuous cities, the tribe, a group of tribes, or community-based nonprofits. So we do have options for who we can reach out to and work with, and we will be looking for advice and ideas from everybody in the community to help support moving forward with those dollars. So with that, any questions?
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to say that I think this is great. I hope that you are given that flexibility. You know, we, a lot of times these sorts of programs are put out and they're looking at the needs of Mexico and then we have to follow the same guidelines and what works down there or what's needed down there is not the same up here. You know, here, anyone can get a Section 8 voucher. They're not hard to get. There's a ton of them. They expire before people get a chance to use them. Down in the cities, people are waiting years, literally years, sometimes a decade to get a Section 8 voucher. And so our needs are different. You know, you can get a Section 8 voucher, you know, you're going to get into housing here. It doesn't matter because there aren't enough units that accept Section 8. So we need to build, I mean, if you can give that off to the HRA to build more at Conifer or whatever, you know, or something like that. We can't stabilize people in housing if there isn't housing for them.
And that's pretty much been the conversation. I mean, it's a fairly short turnaround. I mean, this money's gonna start flowing, it flows twice a year and we'll start in January. So we have a pretty tight timeline to get things moving. And again, we are not housing experts, but we do know what apartments are.
So, you know, the counties or cities see something.
So our surrounding counties are even close to what we're using. The next closest I could find was Olmsted and Stern. So our obvious need is very high compared to similar sized counties.
What about the city?
And I'll forward out that actual allocation list, and I apologize, I did not write that.
Right. It
All counties.
I think she thought you said city, like the cities, not.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's,
No, just counties, sorry about that.
I'm trying to think of a possible department. So if it costs $700, to build a house.
Yeah, it's probably more worth looking at it in a little different way about how it can be a foundation for other funding. And over a 5-year period, we're looking at $2.5 million of work in that involved.
Oh, there's definitely included in that, and how that maybe the word is out. With the phone over here.
Never know. I don't know.
Just a comment, I think in the past, we have supported builder in building homes and then guarantee so much a month. We've done that.
And that kind of what we can talk about.
What last weekend I heard a lot of emails, and a lot of them, referenced the homeless and the homeless population. So I mean, I think, having this allocation will help us address them. Because One thing that those emails are, you know, sounds like they're not hearing enough of this. So, you know,
Thank you.
Okay, we will move on to item 16, 911 ordinance update.
Good afternoon, commissioners. In your packets, you have copies of minutes from the last couple of 911 committee meetings that we have had. We've met twice recently, once in June and once in July. Couple of reasons that we met. The main reason was to discuss some concerns that have come up regarding the method for addressing in common interest communities. The other reason was just to talk about some of the other needs of the ordinance in general. This ordinance has existed since 1998. It has been amended a handful of times since 1998 when it was first adopted. There's quite a bit of language that has kind of stuck around from the very beginning though, and probably could be changed to better meet the needs of what we're actually doing now versus back in the late 90s, when we were looking at implementing this system. But to talk more specifically about this issue of common interest communities that came up, sometime last year, I believe it was, I had a developer come in to apply for an address for a property within, well, the property that he wanted to apply for an address for was adjacent to an existing common interest community. And that existing CIC consists of fourplex structures currently. He was proposing to build another fourplex that was outside the boundary of the CIC, but what we were told was that he's working on expanding the CIC through another phase and develop it into, or expand that development into a combination of fourplexes and single family homes. So we're looking at this property trying to figure out how to do this, because the ordinance currently states that if it's a CIC, there will be one address assigned for the entire development, the entire neighborhood. And then within the neighborhood, all of the structures or units will use a unit number to identify their structure or residence or whatever it is from the others. So we're looking at this property and realizing that it's on the same road as all these other properties that are next to it, part of the CIC. This one's not in the CIC. Technically, we should assign it its own address if it's not in a CIC, but they're saying they're working on an amendment. So there's probably one in the works and it's going to be coming down the road. So it just kind of became a challenging situation to figure out what should we do. And at that time, it became apparent that we've got other possible concerns here too, because that particular development has sort of a network of roads within it. There's two entrances off of two different township roads. This particular one is in Eccles Township. It's the Keep at Pine Grove is the name of this CIC. And so there's two entrances coming off of two different township roads. There's sort of a main road that kind of winds its way through the development. And then there's some offshoots, like little cul-de-sac type offshoots off of that. None of those roads are named. And the ordinance just requires that it's up to the developer or the property owner to ensure that there's adequate signage so that if there's an emergency, they can figure out where to go when they're responding to an emergency. It's become a complicated situation. And I received a phone call from a resident in the Currywood common interest community, which is in Northern Township on the south side of Whiting Road, west of Urban Avenue, not too far from here. And the concern was that there's been a couple of recent situations where an ambulance couldn't figure out which house to go to when there was a 911 call for service for a medical emergency. And so that was alarming as well. Really what it boils down to is that when there's a call at one of these properties, for example, in Currywood, the address is 13 Whiting Road Northwest, and that routes you to the entrance to the development. But once you turn into development, then you're up to relying on signage. That's the responsibility of the developer or the property owners to figure out where to go. So we've talked about that at the 911 committee level. The consensus among the 911 committee so far has been that the roads within these types of developments, particularly the ones that are single family homes, they have characteristics of any typical residential neighborhood. Those roads should be named And addresses should be assigned the standard way that they are for all of the properties, because the way that it's been done is very unconventional. It's not consistent with what you expect for other properties. So we worked on some possible changes to the ordinance. We have sort of a draft of an amendment, but I would say that at this point, it isn't quite ready yet to bring to the board for possible consideration of an amendment. I think we have a little bit more work to do to make sure that we kind of have all of our research done, and we kind of are getting at this as best as we can with a solution. The other thing that has come up recently is I've had a couple of questions about the system in dispatch that's used. The question is sort of, why can't we create sub addresses that allow that system to more precisely show the location rather than just the entrance to the development? Why is it that we can't pinpoint that location of that house, that driveway, or that doorstep? And to be honest, I'm not 100% sure if we can or can't do anything about that. So there's some testing that we could do to see if we could make some improvements to that. That would potentially allow a dispatcher, if they are given an address in one of these developments, to more precisely see where it's located. However, it doesn't change the fact that the roads aren't named. And for the person responding, the personnel responding to that emergency, it's still challenging in that situation. Anything that you would like to add?
Sure, thanks, Kevin. Chris Muller, the Emergency Management Director and the 911 Supervisor for the Beltrami County Sheriff's Office. Kevin used the example of Prairie Wood, and I don't have to handle Prairie Wood, but when we're sitting in 911 and we have to go to Prairie Wood, this is what we see on our map. We see nothing but a big blank area that's in Northern Township. So we have to go from here of needing to send an ambulance to each one of these individual parcels. Now, this paints a little bit more clear picture that there's a lot of structures in it. We then have to go through and then figure out on a third map as to how to get to that unit number. And then we actually have to reference the aerial imaging and try to figure out where we need to go. And actually, as we were meeting, I was working 911, and earlier that morning, we had a medical in, what's the one just west of it? Wheatfield. So there's another one just west of here. And they're like, well, what's your address? 54. I was like, 54 is not an address. What's your address? And so they give me the numerics on what it is. All we see is the navigable road location, which is the center point of the road. So we actually don't get directions on how to get to their residence. So then we are wasting time. Well, I shouldn't say wasting because we're trying to save somebody's life, but we're spending time. And okay, when we come in off of the main road, not the other two entrances, but the main road where the 1320 is, you go to the first intersection, you take a right, and you get to the next intersection, take a left, and we're the blue house, and that's number 54. And we can't type in 54, and there's no way that our squad cars have the capability of this mapping, and there's nothing I can think of that could be put in for a layer that would be navigable, because Minnesota 911's emergency communications networks, so we're working diligently on getting a universal address, and this doesn't conform to what it is. The Master Street address guide is when we have address point is it's to the center of the main road, and that's how we get to people's houses when they have an emergency. We can get to that point. That's their driveway. That's their house. And when we train children, it's like, what is the number outside of your house? And it's easy when they have a blue and white sign out there. The blue and white sign is 1320, 1420, whatever it is. But if they say the house number is 54, we have to be able to communicate with a child that this is a unit number, not a house number. So then it's a unit number within the development. Then we have to figure out what the development is, and then we have to look at it that way. And then we have to provide those turn-by-turn instructions to the animals as we're going through it. These are popping up needs, and we were looking at it, and I was describing it as if it's the third house on the left. Well, not really. There was 2 empty lots. It was the first house on the left, so the animals ended up driving by, and then they called back. The animals drove by, they had to turn around and get them. So we do lose a lot of time with trying to figure out how to navigate to these addresses. And probably a more frustrated for FedEx and UPS because they don't have dispatchers. You went too far, turn around.
I just want to add on to that. I just happened to be, I had to run out to one of those developments out there. I forget the name of it was. It may or may not have been what you're referring to. And I had a hard time finding the house because in addition to everything you said, the unit numbers on some of them, they're on the house and some of them they're on a little sign. And so there wasn't inside the development, there wasn't even uniformity as to where those unit numbers were. And I did the same thing. I drove past the house and then I had to tell by the other homes what their numbers were and kind of figure out that it was, that I had gone by it. And so I mean, that's just for me doing something innocuous, you know, but when minutes really count.
And in some of the developments, I don't know if it's prairie specific, so I don't have the unit numbers, but they're not sequential, so they don't always follow the same sequence as you're going in. So then you're not able to, okay, 48's over here, 49 must be over here, because where's 49?
The other thing that comes up too, is like Prairie Wood, there's multiple entrances, so where the main number is on this road might not be the closest entrance to get to the house that you're needing to get to, so that wastes time also.
So these combination communities, they're not just single family residential type developments. It's broad. There's condominiums, there's townhomes, Vista North, part of Vista North in the city of Bemidji is a CIC, Deep Rock Townhomes is a CIC. But there's also campgrounds. Rogers Campground on Upper Red Lake is a CIC. Summer Haven on Gull Lake is a CIC. So you've got different land use types that make up these different CICs. So really when you're talking about addressing and the best way to assign addresses, you have to look at land use. And so from my perspective, I struggle to see where it was a good idea to address these properties this way. And to be totally transparent, this, like I mentioned, this ordinance was first established in 1998. This specific language that says this is how CICs shall be addressed, that wasn't added until 2007. We had quite a few CICs that existed already at that point in time. Many of them were in the city of Bemidji, and I've gone through and looked at the ones just in the city of Bemidji. There are, I think, between 20 and 25. Almost all of them are addressed the way that you would typically expect properties to be addressed. Each structure has its own unique address. The roads have names. Most of them were done that way already. So I struggle to understand why this was done. I obviously wasn't here at that point in time, and I haven't been able to find the minutes documenting the conversations that occurred at that point in time. But this is where we're at.
Kind of growing up on the res, you know, it almost sounded like those were the directions to my grandma's. It was. You know, but you know, I do appreciate, you know, that you guys looking into this, and it does sound like it is something that we do need to update. That might look forward to their future drafts or whatever does develop from this. How much time do you need, or do you have?
I would imagine within the next couple of months, we could be looking at having an ordinance amendment prepared to consider. Perhaps within the next month. There's just a couple of other things that I'd like to research a bit further, just to have other questions answered and be able to say that we thoroughly researched this all the way through. Because in all honesty, if we're talking about the possibility of changing addresses, which is kind of the direction the committee conversations have gone so far, to say like with Prairie Wood, for example, the roads aren't named. What we should probably do as a long-term solution to this is go back through, name the roads, and every house in there is going to get a new address. That has a big impact on people because it's, if anyone's ever moved from one house to another, you know that it's a lot of work to change your address. It's a lot of work if you have to change your address and you move. You're still in the same house and then your address changes for that property. That's not convenient. So we've acknowledged that that is not convenient and that there would be a lot of communication that has to happen around this. That's the end result. We've looked at, you know, just to put things into perspective, I was gonna, off the top of my head, I'm trying to remember exactly how many addresses we have in the county. I believe we're close to 20,000 addresses in the entire county. We've identified just over 300 addresses that would probably change
if we go back through and find all these roads that were unmaintained.
But it saves 1 or 2 lives. to save this.
One of the other technologies that we employ in the 911 center is a product called Rapid SOS. And we all know that landlines are really becoming scarce anymore. I bet we could ask how many people in the room, it'd be less than a quarter actually have a landline anymore. So we rely heavily on cell phone technology to locate people. The current phase 2 mapping, which is just a technical term, that you triangulate it off of 2 towers that we think you're somewhere in this area. Well, Rapid SOS is a free product from a vendor because they utilize the data for other things like Uber and Lyft and trying to find locations. When you dial a 911 calls, it opens up your GPS unless you've specifically opted out of it. I'm not going to tell people how to do it because it's such a lifesaver. But it will open up your GPS and it'll give us your precise location. So where Uber can drive up, I want to get to the point where an ambulance can do the same thing because it does not happen in today's technology. And unless we have a navigable address, it's going to map to this middle of the field and it's going to think that the closest address is 9910 Aspen Avenue when really you got to come off of Golden Road. So it will save lives.
We will continue on to item 7, behavioral health program collaborative for adult correctional centers.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity coming back about this. This is what Kevin was talking about back in the days when we had rural routes. We used telephone poles. Beltrami Electric did big maps that we'd unroll and we'd pull them out and we'd figure out which pole it was and what was the closest driveway to that pole. And that was how, E911 did this, but we still got a lot where we can go in the future to make things a lot easier for us. No more taking left turn after the old tree, and you'll see the green mailbox, and when the driveway divides, sticking on the left. It's really complicated, but getting here, what I wanted to talk about today. It's not too often that I come to the board and I say I'm really excited about something. But this is something that I'm really excited about. I wanted to inform the board that we've entered into an agreement with Sanford Behavioral Health to provide some really unique and very much needed services to the Beltrami County Jail. What we were able to do has been something that's been on Sheriff Podaf's wish list, my wish list since 2014, when our mental health collaborative formed, and we started addressing the needs of our community. And one of the areas that Sheriff Podaf and I addressed was the fact that we have very underserved individuals that end up residing in our jail. And because they're in jail, funding stops and we're unable to provide services, very much needed services. What Sanford Behavioral Health was able to do was they were able to acquire a grant, a SAMHSA grant, that is going to allow them to provide mental health and chemical dependency treatment beginning within our jail facility when somebody enters. We've been moving towards this for a long time, and it was. I'm glad that they applied for the grant, and I'm glad they were awarded the grant because it was a unique opportunity for us. I'm not aware of any other jail in northern Minnesota that's going to be able to provide this. So just to hit a couple of highlights of things. Again, we identified the needs of our inmates. A lot of them keep coming back to jail because, again, it's chemical dependency and mental health needs that are not being met. Things are not started inside the jail. And of course, when they get released from jail, there's language and go back to what they were doing prior to ever going to jail in the first place. So we worked on knowing that this money was available and hoping that others would apply. And sure enough, they got us. So we did an RFP in June, and we awarded that later that month to Sanford Behavioral Health. They're going to start working on this thing and start actually practicing before the lease changes, what I'm hoping. So this fall. The exciting thing about this is it's going to cost us $0 moving forward. This is almost about $400,000 worth of annual services that are going to come to Beltrami County Jail. We're gonna be looking at about $7,500 in our contribution towards that. That'll come out of the jail canteen fund. That's money that we use for providing services to inmates, but it has to be dedicated money just for that. But one of the future asks is going to be an in-kind contribution from you as the board to help provide some space for them to conduct business. Right now, Beltrami County Jail and both of the other issues, Health and Human Services, we've been talking about where we might be able to put these people to be able to do this. And neither one of us right now have adequate space for it, but temporarily we're going to be taking our dispatch center that has a lot of file cabinets in it right now, and we're going to move all that out. We're going to repurpose some cubicles and put it inside there. We'll get MIS to run some lines in there. They'll have computer access, and they'll be able to have a temporary office space. Something that you're going to have to look at next week, though, of course, is we have a special meeting on our jail and justice study and what comes out of that. We have identified current space within our facilities in the old courthouse annex that could be utilized by them moving forward, but we don't know what our study is going to say. Are we going to be utilizing that space for something else? So depending on what they tell us next Wednesday, and decision going forward by the board here of what we do for that in-kind contribution for providing space. I think they're more than happy to continue in the temporary cubicles, but again, here again, it's not a very private place to be charting and things like that with people that we develop. So I'll work with. But just so you know, this program is going to provide not only mental health screening, comprehensive substance use assessment, medication management, individual and group mental health therapy, individual and group substance abuse treatment, care coordination, and to support not only during their incarceration, but externally after they're released from the jail. So it's full wraparound services. We get somebody stabilized in the jail. If it's medication, we start them on the treatment, whatever it is. We identify needs. When they get released from jail, those services continue on the backside when they get into the community. Hopefully we keep people stabilized. Hopefully we divert them from the path they were on that got them in jail in the first place. But as I said when I started, it's probably one of the biggest things I've ever seen happen in the jail system and not only Beltrami County, but Minnesota in general. So very excited about this. Like I said, if we do not utilize that space and you so decide to give it to Sanford Behavioral Health for their offices, it will require an update to the HVAC system and maybe some new carpeting. Carpeting has been in there since the courthouse annex opened back in, I think it was the 1970s. So we might ask for a little carpeting in there. But the HVAC, that update has all been budgeted by you in prior years. So the money's just sitting there, but our facility manager is kind of holding on to see what happens from our jail and justice study. So I am truly excited about what this is going to mean for us. I attached to this, you're going to see the RFQ that we put out and also what the packet is that their response to it. This was pretty minimal. What they've decided to put out, I think is going to exceed, far exceed what we were asking for. So I'm really excited about this. I think Becky is too. And again, our hope is that we not only reduce recidivism, but we affect the well-being of our entire community. Any questions?
Mr. Chair, I don't know if this is a question or concern or time. I think that being able for Sanford to be able to have continuous care for people, the people in mental health, with behavioral health issues will have bad days and maybe they commit a crime and end up in jail. And what often will happen is once they go to jail, then that treatment, that therapy or whatever it is broken off. And then they're in jail, maybe just for a week or so, and then they come back out. And it takes, I forget, there's studies, it's just an average of 3 weeks or 3 months or something to get back into therapy and back in onto their meds and things like that. So if we can keep that from breaking and keep people stabilized, it's gonna benefit the county in so many different ways. It's gonna benefit Sanford. It's gonna, like you said, it's gonna benefit quality of life, not just the people involved, but their families and neighbors. And this is a great step forward. It's a great step.
I'm truly excited. And again, I've never been able to wrap my head around why we stop services, somebody who's getting services outside of the jail. And once they enter jail and that all of a sudden stops, I've never been able to understand that. And, again, this is something we've been working on for a very long time, since 2014. And everything we've done in the community to address those needs. This is huge. So,
Mr. Chair, just to echo both comments, the irony is on the civil commitment side of it. Yeah, and where the criminal and civil commitment side merged, where someone is accused of a crime and is either pleading insanity or temporary insanity or something, such where we do get their civil commitment to be a restored competency. The irony is they will sit with no services in the jail for months at a time. The current backlog to get someone to the state hospital in Noka is over 3 months. And it's, last I checked, we have had people sit there for many months. They end up suffering because of it. It's, I'm really excited about this as well.
Sounds like a good opportunity to address that really huge need in our community. I'm excited to hear the partnership between the sheriff's office and the center.
And also Health and Human Services. They've been a part of this thing. Jeff's in the back here. He's been a part of this, this project we've been working on. And again, truly gives me goosebumps thinking about what this is going to do for us. Again, the effect it's going to have on our whole entire community, I think it's just huge. So, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Well, we will move on to your next, you have the,
Oh, the conversion of the staff position from corrections to.
so item 8, conversion of staff positions.
So we met last year as a group to address the need of our staffing shortage within our jail. Unfortunately, now our PSAP, our 911 center is been affected the same way. We identified a source of unfilled FTEs in our jail that we're still trying to work on, and we're really truly not sure that we're making the right choice yet. We'll come back to you in a probably, well, I won't, but somebody else will come back to you probably in a year or so and say what the sheriff did was wrong or what the sheriff did was right. I'm not sure, but we have a really huge significant problem with staffing shortage in our jail. So what we are in our PSAP center. So what I've asked to be done is we're going to move 2 positions from those unfilled positions within the jail, those FTEs, and we're going to move them into our PSAP center. The whole idea is that we will put our minimum staffing at 2 and raise it to 3. That is a huge challenge for us just to get to 2 people on many days because of how short we are. Chris was sitting here, and Janice, who is our team lead. Just this past pay period, they had a combined over 70 hours of overtime that the 2 of them put in just to fill open positions. And that's just, we need to get some help. So the quick Band-Aid for this thing was we moved the 2 FTEs, we'll get those positions hired. We'll reassess it and see if we did the right thing, but that is a much needed thing. The other side of this thing is, I've told you in a couple of other board meetings that we've approached the city of Bemidji. We've done a study, and the city of Bemidji consumes about 70% of our dispatcher's time on non-emergency related calls. So that means if you have a shoplifter at Walmart, a little crash in the parking lot at Target, where those things consume 70% of our dispatcher's time. We did 2 studies to confirm this. We did one during last fall, and we just got done completing one in June. Again, the numbers stay the same. So I've also approached the city and saying I'm going to be asking them during this budget cycle they're in right now to consider paying for at least 2 FTEs moving forward. I've talked to Tom about this, and I know that Tom's had outreach to the city to see what their thoughts are. So I think just moving forward, it's something that the board, I really truly think needs to follow through in the future. We just can't continue to serve the needs without having more staff. And again, other communities, they do a hybrid model, or they pay for it entirely. contribute to the sheriff's office for those needs. Now, other communities like Grand Rapids to the east, Grand Forks to the west. They do two different models where they run their own non-emergency dispatch center during Monday through Friday business hours. And then they pay the sheriff's office to provide those non-emergency services in the evening and weekends and holidays. But in order for us to, I think, continue the best community, we have to just have them contribute to that, our PSAP budget, by providing those positions. Our contract for that, I don't know if you guys knew this, and none of you in here would sign that contract, but 20-some years ago, we signed a contract that said that we would pay for that. And so we've been providing those services for the last 20 years as part of that. And again, I wish you could have seen what the crystal ball looked like, but again, it's just an unbelievable amount of work. And I'm not talking the 911 calls. I'm not talking about sending an ambulance. I'm talking about business radio related calls. How do I pay my parking ticket? All those things. What do I cook my turkey to on Thanksgiving Day? Believe it or not. So. But I know they use the Google machine to figure that one out and provide people that, but yeah, when those business calls don't get answered right away, they turn around, they'll call 911, but the 911 might be asking somebody.
Sheriff, have the city responded at all to any of your discussions about that? I know they're not probably required to until next August, but any kind of positive response at all about them counting up the one or two or more full-time equivalents?
Nothing positive. So there was a little bit of pushback right away when I initially sent it out because I wanted to put it on their radar to consider this going into the budget cycle. And again, I would want to know if I was looking at that in the future of what I need to prioritize for my constituents. And so I thought just putting them on notice that this contract is up next August, a year from now. And we're going to have a choice to make. We either continue to provide the services for free, they start paying for the services, or we don't provide them at all for them. And we put them in a rock and a hard place trying to find them. So.
There's a turkey cooking chart now on the city website.
An FTE is a full-time equivalent.
Thank you.
So we're two new positions. It would give us, like I said, the 3-man teams in dispatch. We are the busiest dispatch center north of St. Cloud. We handle the closest PSAP center to us that handles the calls that we do is Thief River calls. They handle 8 911 calls a day, and we handle over 100 911 calls a day in our PSAP center. We average answering the phone over 6,000 times in a month. That's a lot of phone calls. A lot of phone calls, and when 2/3 of it belong to the city.
How much is that earning?
Two FTE, the number for that is, I think is in the neighborhood of $60,000. We're already budgeted, so we don't have a budget impact on that. We're just going to do the shell game and raise money. Right. So, but yeah, that's approximately ballpark of those positions. I again encourage you moving forward to get the city to get on board with this and not continue to make us pay for it after this contract's done.
Sure. I'm still just make a comment.
Yes.
From the 911 side, is I've been doing this for 16 years. I took a little time off in the console and did emergency management for the county, but things have changed so much since I started here that it was an expectation that when you called 911 for a medical, is you had pre-arrival and you had somebody there to help you the entire time until an ambulance pulled in. We're so busy now. We're actually because we're required by law to provide telephonic CPR. We're actually to the point where, okay, I have to answer another phone call. You just keep doing those compressions and don't stop until I come back and talk to you. That's the point where we're at with how busy we are. And that's, to me, that's a disservice to people that are calling here when they're trying to save a loved one. And you get to hear the beeping. We don't have balloon music on our hold. They get a rigid beep that is what they hear. And we're having to do that daily of having to put 911 calls on hold because we're so busy. And it's not only because we're so short staffed right now, is when we did have more staff assigned to us at COVID times, if we were running those 3-man teams, it ran so much smoother than it is today. It's really frustrating. I'm really hopeful that this is going to be more than a Band-Aid and that it can finally get us to where we need to be to the call volume that we process.
Nobody calling 911 should ever be put on hold.
So currently you have 2-man teams and this would help you get to the 3-man teams, which would hopefully.
The two FTEs will add to that. It won't give them a full 3-man team 24/7. Getting the extra positions from the city, if they so choose to do that, would give us those 3-man teams 24/7. Again, it's to continue with all our need. I hate to say it, we all know what the crime stats came back this year, and those numbers are reflected in our dispatch center. We're the first ones to pick up the phone and say 911, what's your emergency, and to get services. So I don't know what more I can say about that other than they're hurting pretty badly, and we need to do something to help them.
So is this on a consent or?
It's actually no board action is needed. Yeah, it's just again, it's just moving those FTEs from jail to RP staff. So, but more of an informative thing to the board to say this is what we're doing to hopefully address the problem. So,
Or we should know more within the year then, huh?
I hope so. Hopefully the new sheriff isn't come back and saying the old one made a mistake. So
Thank you, Chair. We'll continue on to item 9, the scheduled road tour date.
First item I have there for you is the road tour date, October 11th, or the Tuesday, some board meetings. Somewhere like we've done in the past. Work for you guys? What is it for that?
8 o'clock, 8 to 3.
October 11th.
The Tuesday, we're doing our board meeting.
Now, for that in the plan, that we did as well to include, candidates that so, if we can extend that invitation to them as well, I appreciate that.
Yep. I'll work that. 11 works.
My calendar is open right now, but might have a horror man or something.
Nice day off for all.
All right. Next item. Okay. There's the draft 5-year plan. Here's some extras here for work that. Every year we update that 5-year plan, drop year, add a year. Help. So what we've done here, we're adding 27. The changes as noted on the agenda bill is yellow are brand new projects. Orange ones would be changing about a year, so moving from one year to another. And the original year would be on the far right hand side of the note. Gray are just projects that are eligible, are on our local option sales tax list. Just people highlighted so we know which ones are eligible for that. And then at the very end, there's some red with the highlight. So, but the 5-year plan, again, is 5 years worth of projects. The project starts on the left-hand side, and then you go across the columns, account for project costs, and then where all their funding. Along with some notes and highlights inside. We're just review
through the first year in 23. The change would be the bridge on 39, the Head Bridge. That was actually a project that was in this year. And it's been delayed, so we're just kind of moving that one forward. Yellow is the shop. I was maintenance shop. I had talked to the board about that earlier this summer. There actually no dollars earmarks that shop project. As you can see in 23, when I talked to the board this summer, it was really spring, and so that we had not received our bids on the construction project. We came in higher, we want to free up any room that was in the 5-year plan, and I had talked about at that time, we allocated to the shop. So, we kind of ate up that plan. And, it is eligible, but it would have to be added to the list. You can redo the list and that's put the shop on there. One option.
How old is the shop?
The 70 model. I can't remember that second. But
So the,
5-year plan,
for the, I would deal for the working on the bigger vehicles. Is that
Yeah.
what the shop is?
yeah, that's
Right.
the shop.
So it's adding on to it to give more space for bigger vehicles, so they don't have to work on them outside.
Correct. But again, so in here, I was originally after the discussion this spring, I was, we were gonna set aside a little bit of money over the years, but I'm gonna pay for it. A little bit of money we don't want to. So, but I still have that shop there just in case $2 do come out, or sales tax come in higher, or state aid comes in higher than we did. So no real big changes for next year. 23 and 24. For the three projects there in orange that are all being delayed a year. Higher costs, and just kind of moving projects around, to fit the funding that we're getting. Project on 7 and 407, and another 407 project, all moving back from 25. And similar, there's a project on 21 and on 27. Those are both moving back from 24 to 25. Two new projects, there's some projects that we would have received some federal funding for. Some slash. And also there was a bridge project that was very far right hand side of. We gave that note that there's a big project up on number 38. It's not quite eligible for funding, so I just. Taking that out of the budget. We can insert that back in when it does. And also. In 26. The new changes there is, a couple more safety projects that we received some federal funding for. So those are new. The big thing, and with all of our projects is cost. Kind of projecting those costs in the next 5 years. And having to move some projects around. In 26, I didn't move this project. The big project on 22. The grading and paving project at 7 miles of that. We've been kind of working on that project, not quite sure if we're gonna move all into 1 year. That's construction, very expensive project. So, actually pulling it out or keep it in 1 year. Again, if we did that, you will have to borrow some ahead some money from our building funds. A large project for us to do for them. But for right now, I kept it in 26. But just kind of highlighting it. Then for the 5th year, do all those changes. I didn't have anything from the fifth year, especially shock. I was making shock. And at this point, there is potentially a little bit of, funds there that we could add a project or two, but just with uncertainty of the project costs. And anything I've added in there, but we knew with the shop. We kind of talked about that before, instead of splitting my way, I just, I put about 5 years and hopefully still some, and still some money away for it, and or, if not, there it is. It's the proposed, 5-year plan. The board, everybody wants to look at the different routes on the road tour. Yeah, it's more just kind of a rough information for you to begin with. The public hearing, that would be part of the budget hearing process. That will include the hearing for the 5-year plan, and the final adoption is in that November.
So this is the draft to the public hearing. Sure. Okay, good, because I don't see, County Road 32 going west, and County Road 5 on there. Hopefully we're able to make some changes.
Well, I'll take care of 5 before it becomes your area. It's gonna start to maybe.
Oh, let's stick with 32 then.
Yeah.
Okay.
You got it back on schedule.
All right, we'll move on to the short-term rental and
Alright, I've been asked to come today to talk about, the issue as a result of the citizen concern from, the last board meeting. I'll try to cover a couple quick background points, topics, and then probably bring it more to a discussion, conversation, and take these. But, mostly it revolves around the issue of septic compliance for short-term rentals. So during the ordinance drafting process, we discussed the issue of septic compliance at the planning commission level, when we were writing the shoreline ordinance. And what was kind of a compromise, of what was decided was all permits will require a septic certificate compliance, except type A, which is the smallest one, the lowest percent. If they're applied for within the first 90 days, like the ordinance requires. Assuming we have some sort of septic information on files and turning that comes out. Trying to make it simpler and easier for businesses that are generally not creating problems for us, currently, to comply and move on. That was kind of the idea. Since the adoption of our ordinance and implementation, we've learned that the Minnesota Department of Health requires a septic system certificate compliance for all systems, for all their new licenses, no exception. The Minnesota Department of Health has required licenses for these types of rental units for at least 10 years, but enforcement, like a lot of things, hasn't been a priority for them. Kind of last thing is, currently the short-term rental businesses are required by state rules to obtain a license, and which requires a septic compliance. So, I'll leave it at that. We can have a conversation if you want about any changes or modifications or other directions or anything else. I just wanted to kind of have the summary of that before.
I would like to, if it's a requirement from the state, then we wouldn't need to duplicate it in our ordinance. We could just pull it out of our ordinance, and that it would be on the state to deal with that piece of it. That would be my recommendation.
Mr. Chairman, you're saying the state isn't doing the enforcement. They're not going out and searching for these. So when the county issues the permit, though, they're getting all of our information and data. So they're kind of forced to at that point to require those businesses to get out. So, I'm sorry. So they're really relying on the county to do enforcement to obtain that initial county permit. And then they're going to require.
So by virtue of us
requiring a permit that will trigger the state to come in and make sure that. Or at least according to their.
Wasn't it our board decision that new going forward would need that, but not an existing VRBO or short-term rental?
Yeah, so it's kind of a quirky.
Is it not where this catch is coming in?
It's kind of
That
a
we
quirky.
have one person that's saying, you know, they've been a VRBO, they're not filing for a new.
Right.
So, and I thought our board was united on the fact that we weren't going to go backwards. But moving forward, drawing the proverbial line in the sand, moving forward, then everybody would have to have a septic compliant, right?
That's not what I understood. That was not, that we were going to. I thought you said grandfather, I thought the whole point of having that septic inspection was to make sure that VRBO renters weren't packing their units far beyond the limits of the septic system of those homes. So that's except for type A, because that's such a small, yeah.
And they actually do the same with that.
I mean, we've never required permitting, so in effect, everybody is a first time person. Because they're going in for the first time. To get the permit.
They're an existing business, we're not. Like my intent was not to put somebody out of business by requiring stuff. But they're existing business. It's different if it's on Lake Shore, then they're automatically required to get a permit by our shoreline ordinance.
So in effect, then we're saying that if you had an existing business that is overusing the septic, that's fine.
If it's that indeed overusing septic,
Right,
that'd be up
which is
there.
why we're
But
asking.
it's not realistic that they're overusing the septic, because these are small places that are out and not on shoreline. It's not, it shouldn't be an issue.
You can you can use a dilapidated system regardless of where you are.
There could be 1,000 or more of those in Beltrami County.
No, right,
That aren't VRBOs. I mean, that's kind of irrelevant.
No, it's not.
I mean,
No, it's not.
your septic, my septic, any of it could be.
But here we have an opportunity to make sure that at least some of our subjects that may not be compliant will be checked. These are businesses, you know. I mean, I could say to the Minnesota Department of Health, like my coolers at my restaurant only cool down to 50 degrees, but boy, if I had to replace those coolers to get them to go down to 30 degrees where they should be, that's going to adversely affect my business and my ability to make a profit. So why are you making me have to store food profit? You know, so I'm a little bit frustrated that we're talking about this when I asked to bring up another ordinance we recently revised. When we saw that perhaps the enforcement mechanism wasn't working, everyone told me we can't bring it up, we shouldn't bring it up because it's so new, let's wait here. Now this happens where we see that the enforcement is working and we have to hurry up and fix it to take away that enforcement mechanism. So I'm frustrated that I don't think we're using the same philosophy on the two different solid waste units, solid waste ordinance and the VRBO ordinance. So I just, if that was good enough to wait a year on solid waste, let's go a year and let this run as it is, and you can look at it as year and see if it affects something. Because that's what you guys said about solid waste, and I don't know why that is good enough. It absolutely is. Very much. So I mean, and that's why we're here, you know, to give our, that's why I'm here, is to offer my opinion. We're gonna have ordinances.
Apples and oranges.
Yeah, I guess I still want clarification for type A, B, and C. What is the difference between the three of them as far as the lines?
It's type A, B, and C are just different sizes.
Right,
So,
and what are the requirements?
as far as like septic goes,
Yeah,
so they're all required to get a certificate of compliance for their septic systems, except for type A's that were existing prior to. So we specifically did that, and the board, I don't believe, had that conversation about the details of how that would work out. I know we did it at the planning commission level when we were working on this, because this was a point of contention that we discussed for a little while, I mean, more than a lot of other places in government we talked about But, where we kind of ended it with the discussion at the planning commission level was, we've got information on a lot, and they are lower. But there's a lot of systems out there that we don't have information on. Either they were installed legally back before the date of the county required permits, or maybe they were just installed on the weekend by a homeowner and they're not legal and they're not compliant, or maybe they were just built in the 1950s and they don't meet any current rules and they don't actually treat sewage. We don't know. And that's really the situation that brought this up, was one that just doesn't have any record, no information out there about what's existing. And so that person is gonna have to figure that out before they can get a license in their car. They're gonna have a certificate of compliance instead of just a license in their car. So then really the discussion is about, I want to say, it kind of feels like it's semantics on the county side.
Thank you, Chair. I think you hit on it, because at least my intent on this thing was, if you have an old system, that you have some documentation on, we don't need to do it again. That's where I'm gonna hang mine. But like you say, if there's nothing else, this could be a cistern, it could be just we know there's a lot of those types of systems for seasonal cabins. And now if they're using them not as just a seasonal cabin, and a little more use, I'm gonna hang my hat on that one. And I'm gonna go back to say that I remember us saying that we didn't want to make somebody not be in compliance by passing this ordinance. But if they don't have proof of something that says that Joe Jackson Excavation put a system in that complied in 1977, then I kind of want to see something that says Dave Larson went out and looked at the system, and at least it complies for a 2-bedroom home or a 3-bedroom. So I think you just did it. I think you hit where that's where I'm gonna need my hand. If you have some old documentation, bring it forward. Let's see it. Let's see the comply. And I think that's a good road.
Mr. Chair, I would agree with Commissioner to check that. Mr. Chair.
And that way, Commissioner Olson, we don't take somebody out.
Right.
That was kind of our intent, was we have to make this new ordinance and we have to draw a line in this. But at the same time, if they got something that's just totally not compliant, I'm not gonna get behind that. I can't, in all good conscience. We gotta have some previous documentation or make them do what we compliant.
Yeah, my concern is that the primary reason for this ordinance in the first place was basically 2 bad actors that were big VRBOs on Lake Shore. And that was the reason why we came up with this ordinance. So now we've got all these other 100 VRBOs in the county that weren't causing any problems, didn't know anything about that they even existed in a lot of cases. Now we're gonna put one or more of them out of business because of creating an ordinance that, that's the part that I struggle with. If there was if the shoe was on the other foot and it was your VRBO, we'd probably think differently. That's my thoughts on it. Likewise, if you happen to have your a house or cabin and that you rented out a few times a year to make some extra money to help pay for the taxes on it or something, and now all of a sudden because of this ordinance, you're out of business.
Mr. Chair, the only difference is that, I mean, this septics have, I mean, if they're suitable, everybody can do it. We want to make sure that the septics are suitable for the amount of use on the roof.
I get that, but we wouldn't even been looking at any of that if we hadn't created this ordinance for the 2 bad actors.
Sure, but they're still compliant.
And it never would have been found until that goes to
Right,
sale.
right, and so here we are fortunate enough.
Well, fortunate or not fortunate, good job.
Well, if you're concerned about water quality.
Sounds like we're not gonna get anywhere with that discussion there. I would like to continue to move on, and I guess, what's our plan moving forward? Are we gonna discuss this in further or? It sounds like there was compromise between Mr. Rutstick and Olson on.
Mr. Chair, if we have to run. There's one case that's on the table that's in question.
There's one for sure, but it's 2 separate houses that I deal with. There is another one that I know of that is like that, that person hasn't got a good or anything yet, but they're in a situation where that one is self-installed, it doesn't mean setbacks from the well, that one on other issues as well. So, it's one of those where, for the better, I mean, the risk here is that you have unsuspected public. So, the one in particular, is really close to where the water is going. Well, that's maybe a good one to say, that needs to be tested, or not well, that's not, so it's probably good with that one. But, we're administering it currently, the way that you kind of described it, the way I said that if they've got some sort of record and they existed, that's what we're going to do. But if they don't have any record, we're requiring them to bring us something.
And that was what the board passed and said, if there are some differences, then bring it back to us for a case by case basis.
I don't think there is a case by case basis.
Field project.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
they can apply for a variance. or-
Right, that's,
Yeah,
a variance or that. Okay.
Otherwise, if you want to change the ordinance, you can go through that amendment process. I'd recommend that we leave it, let it run for a while and see how it goes. And an amendment process would take a little bit of time, more time than the deadline that you file. And the Department of Health requires a certificate of compliance anyways. But I don't, this person that brought the issue forward isn't going to save in the long run. I think we never wanted something to figure it out. The county's position here is somewhat inconsequential, it needs to be done. That's. It's fine. If I'm at your pleasure, so give me direction on.
So right now, the only access that this person has is to have somebody from the state come out and check whether it's.
They would hire a private consultant to do that.
Greg, can you remind me of when we enacted this ordinance?
It was,
Became official July 1st.
yeah, it went into effect July 1st. It was.
So then the owners are supposed to come in compliance by
Within 90 days.
90 days. Yeah. So I mean, to me, that's really not a lot of time to really, move around money or make some sort of investment, so.
We've told most people that we're going to, on it a little bit more of this. We'll figure out ways to make it work, that we're not gonna draw a line in 90 days and say, sorry, unless they just refuse to do anything. And we're gonna end up coming to some agreements and giving people some time frames to kind of be compliant with some of these things, because logistically, some of it just can't be done. So, like everything else we do with the forest, we're gonna try to be as flexible as possible and work.
For that 90 days, so they know you're gonna be vice versa.
Yeah, we told.
Because that 90 days, that scares some of them. There's no way that they're gonna get consultant, come on, check it out.
Yeah, that's maybe possible, but we'll work. And then the result of that, if they do need to upgrade their system, what would come on time frame. But like Greg pointed out, there is significant expense.
There is,
What? That's not.
that's where I. Concerned. Some people, I understand. All this thing. If they're not compliant, I would vote for that route. But I wish there was a way that we could monitor that. Except, how did this happen? Somebody commented, oh yeah, it's 25 years old. The workforce policy. Okay.
I hope that helps.
But that, Mr. Chair, that didn't, I guess there's a big debate, it's the right of the property owner versus economic good and where that line is. That's why, I mean, maybe Commissioner Gothic and I should have a debate somewhere about it, because I think we both represent legitimate perspectives, and we gotta find that middle ground.
Thank you, Brenton. So I will, move the administrator's update to, just before the commissioner's reports. To allow us some time for a little break before the starting, so. We'll reconvene at 5 o'clock. All right, I'll call the Beltrami County Board regular meeting to agenda, please, and for pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, welcome. There's no comments from the board chair. It's good to see a nice crowd. I think maybe we should come out in the community more often because you don't have this type of audience at the council chamber. So welcome. I do appreciate everybody coming out this evening. Wish the weather was a little bit nicer, but here's the rain. Also, I want to acknowledge she doesn't no, but I want to acknowledge Patricia Hart. You know, she always brings us lovely flowers and a good deed that I want to recognize. So thank you, Patricia. Citizens addressing the board. Anyone wishing to address the county board on an item not on the agenda may come forward at this time to be recognized by the board chair. Please state your name and address for the record. Comments are limited to 5 minutes. A personnel complaint against an individual county employee may not be heard initially at a board meeting. Personnel complaints may be submitted to the board in writing through the county administrator's office. A person addressing the board may not use profanity or vulgar language. And I would like to say that if you are coming up, please stick to the 5 minutes because I'm not too sure how many are going to be speaking or coming forward tonight, and we do have some other agenda items as well to take care of. So with that, I'll begin my timer. If anybody wants to come to the table and address the board. Yeah, you can.
Oh, that's good. Thank you, Christian. Very good, thanks. Good evening, gentlemen, ma'am. Ara Gallo, 5145 Shingle Mill Road, Northeast Sugar Bush Township. I'd like to speak to you about the, potential budgetary cuts at the Kitchgawn Regional Library, the Bemidji branch. It was interesting tonight to hear Sheriff Vitale talk about how busy Bemidji is and the dispatch center is, because frankly, the Bemidji Public Library is by far the busiest library in northern Minnesota. Little known fact, we serve over 150,000 unique patrons per year. We check out on average 157,211 items. Our computers are used by 21,719 people per year. The Bemidji Public Library is the only library open more than 50 hours a week between Brainerd and Winnipeg. And we serve 48,000 people in the poorest county in the state of Minnesota, although we share that honor with Monoman County. When we got word of potential budget cuts in an email from County Administrator Tom Berry, not from County Commissioner, we were shocked. Sorry, we did do sign. We had only asked for a 3% increase from 2022, well below the pace of inflation, which any economist right now will say is in the average of 9%. And KRLS was already committing $42,000 from our reserve fund to offset any potential Beltrami County tax levies. We do have money. Kitchgawn Regional Library System does in a reserve fund, just like any responsible fiscal organization has. Money that has been built up over decades. A large portion of this money is dedicated to capital improvements, with more held in reserve to ensure library operations continue if there is a total region-wide funding cut. If Beltrami County stops funding the library and goes back to the minimum maintenance required by the state, what is to stop Cass, Hubbard, and Waukena counties as well from cutting their commitments? When they cut their commitments, and when the cities and municipalities cut their commitments as well, we'll leave 5 counties in north central Minnesota with a vastly different library experience. I do find it interesting that during the 2018 budget crisis, when all of you were on the county commission. When Beltrami County almost went bankrupt due to the out of home placement crisis. Beltrami County, the library was fully funded. Yet for the 2023 budget, when, as far as I know, obviously inflation, union contracts and all that do take up money, we are not facing anywhere near the fiscal crisis that we faced in 2018, when, again, under your watch, we were bailed out by the state of Minnesota. Just in closing, because I'm not going to take up 5 minutes because there are a few other people here. Commissioner Lukacek in an email from August 16th, referencing the library states, and I quote, "They continue to tax constituents, grow reserves, and are after." Commissioner Lukacek in an email from August 16th, referencing the library states, and I quote, "They continue to tax constituents, grow reserves, and are after more again, year after year." Commissioner Lukacek and the rest of you, we don't tax people. The library doesn't. That's you guys. That's our local government, our state government, and our federal government. And to me, and many people, as we see our tax bills rise in the stratosphere in the most heavily taxed county in the state of Minnesota, instead of us continuing to tax the constituents, even the library, it really seems like the county is doing that. Plus, at a 0.5% decrease, will my tax bill go down by $20? Because in the 20+ years I've owned property in the state of Minnesota, in the county of Beltrami, my tax bill has never decreased beyond.
Hi, I am Deborah Hoffman. I am a resident here of Beltrami County and the city of Bemidji. And I am also a member of the Bemidji Public Library Board. And with some same concerns that I already spoke to you about. But I also come from a library philosophy. I was a school library media specialist in the Bemidji school for 30-some years, 36 total in my career, and have now been on the library board for 5 years. So I understand what's going on in the public library. So it's come to my attention that, of course, the board's considering a 35% cut for their new 2023 budget. And this not only affects the Bemidji, but also the Blackduck families too, for library. And this kind of a cut will have a huge impact on the services that the library can perform. Hours would have to be cut, staff would have to be cut. And right now, I only work 20 hours a week. So that's already not much. So I just want to make sure that you understand that the library is used a lot. It's not just, since there's the internet and Amazon, some people think the library is used, but it really is. And especially that it's in place. I mean, it was used a lot and was open more than people might think. It was closed for a little while, but the staff, you can check out books, the staff brought them to the cars. They supported the community with on the phone and online. And as the doors opened, the library made sure that services were available. We had tools for computers out and things were, doing the best they could to help our community. And when the courthouse was closed due to COVID, not only did, and they only did their business via Zoom or the internet, the library stepped up to help those who didn't have access to the internet or didn't know how to use the internet, such as senior citizens. And they couldn't help with the legal things, but they could help get those people connected to the courthouse. And this is just some of the things that the library does for people in the court. The library was there for the community in Florida. Let's hope that the community was there for our library. Today, the library is open on a pretty normal schedule. And as a library board member, we get reports from the manager of the library on this situation. Similar to what Ara just said, it's incredible how many people are through those doors. For instance, just in March 2022, in that month, the library was open $198. They had 10,103 customers come through the door. And they had 8,115 checkouts of materials. And that doesn't even include the online access that people have for the electronic books, audio books. That wasn't even included in the statistics. There were 7 special programs for adults that month, and 321 people attended at the library. Then there was 373 other people who logged on online to watch it at home. So the library is doing a lot for the community. The meeting room was used for 40 different meetings. We had 237 people attending. And this was just an example of 1 month. So some of you have, may have heard that the Kitchen Regional Library System had some extra money for our religion. And they do, but that has strings attached. It's for capital improvements, not operating. So the county. In the library world, we have a saying that knowledge is power. And now that you have some knowledge about the Vinci Public Library, I urge you to use that knowledge and to reject the budget that drastically cuts 35% of our library budget for the 2020 year. So I urge you to fully know that you have in the past our library program. Thank you.
Good afternoon, commissioners and guests. My name is Lois Egelhoff, and I've been a Grand Valley resident and property taxpayer for 25 years. There are many good things about living in the Bemidji area, but one very important thing is having a place open to all, young, old, rich, poor, for all people, and that is our library. Therefore, I was shocked and amazed when I heard that you, our duly elected commissioners, had talked about not funding the Bemidji Public Library. I decided to find out why you might consider defunding this gem, the one place where all are welcome. Thinking that you might decide only 3 days a week is enough for our residents to enjoy, but then I read through your 228-page budget for 2022, where with $27,086,827, which is a 3.96 increase. Your mission statement, followed by your vision statement, seem to negate the idea of taking funding from our library. You wrote in your mission and value statement, you want Beltrami County to be a catalyst that promotes healthy families, environmental quality, expanding economic opportunity, and quality of life second to none. Your vision statement says you want Beltrami County to be a model of excellence and will create a legacy and tradition of success that expands opportunities for all of its citizens. My understanding is that some of the board believe the library is extra. And looking through your budget, I see you have money set aside in different categories, in the same way all businesses and organizations do. You cannot say you will not repave a road that needs repaving because you don't drive on it. You can take that money and reduce property taxes, for example. There are many pots of money, so to speak, in the budget process, just as the board has money set aside for specific areas. So too does Kitchigami Regional Library. The money that you propose to not give our library is the money that is used for staffing and to keep the doors open. The day I heard that this was proposed, I thought about a recent visit I had to the library. First, a young man comes in. He has to use the computer, which the library is assisted him in doing, and then he asks for a little more help. And finally, he asks for printing off of job application. As you know, most jobs are posted online. If you don't have enough money for a computer and you need a job, you go to the library. Then you can begin to have the American dream of making enough money to have what you want, including a home on which you pay property taxes, which goes to the library. The next person who came in was a young mother with children. As the mom spoke to the librarian, the little girl pulling out her mom's and I'm saying, can I go to the books? Can I go to the books? And mom had a large bag and exited with a book bag full of books. The next couple wanted books on tape because they were probably my age. One of them couldn't see so well. The library helped them out, and the next person wanted a computer to do family research. Now, during the COVID health crisis, where did the children go who do not have Wi-Fi access at home? The library. When someone needed to have a meeting but didn't have access to do so, they go to the library. There's a computer set up in a private room so they can be interfaced privately when you don't have a computer at home. If an older person who does not have a computer and knowledge of how computers work needs to fill out a health form, they need assistance to get insurance and medication. Where do they go? the library. If you belong to a book club and can't afford to buy every book, where do you go to the library? If you're researching local, state, federal government, how they work, go to the library, that will help. Although I want our elected commissioners to be thrifty, taking money from our library is the one place where all are welcome and help. It would be a very mean and negligent thing to do. You gentlemen would have to revise your mission and vision statements to reflect you want to help just certain people, not all the residents of Beltrami County. I hope that's not the case. I understand wanting to save money, but I also understand keeping the library open for all of us should be a priority. I didn't complain when your pay was raised. You're our representatives and you must listen to the people, including all those children who need a safe place to go, a free book to read, a free movie to watch, and a place for everyone who works there. Stops, answers questions, and helps them in their quest for knowledge. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you on why our library is vital to our community needs before we find it. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me or go to the local library, which is open 56 hours.
Good evening. Fairly brief. Thank you all for coming. I appreciate you all coming out. Being engaged. My name is Jeremiah Lind. I'm a resident of Turtle River, and I'm here to comment regarding the proposed cuts to the library program. I will not spend time on discussing how inhumane it is to threaten people's livelihoods during these uncertain times. I will not go into detail about how awful the idea is or how it makes me angry, sad, and embarrassed to have to come here and explain to adults why we need to fully fund our library. Nor will I simply beg you to fund the library at the requested level due to give them more money. In keeping with inflationary measures, 8% increases from previous measures would allow the employees who are currently facing the brunt of these inflationary prices to be able to get food on their table. In her article, Library as Infrastructure, Shannon Mattern examines the many functions the library has in our society. Specifically, she says this regarding libraries as social infrastructure. Quote, public libraries are often seen as opportunity institutions, opening doors to and for the disenfranchised. People turn to libraries to access the internet, take a GED class, get help with the resume or job search, and seek referrals to other community resources. A recent report by the Center for Urban Future highlighted the benefits to immigrants, seniors, individuals searching for work, public school students, and aspiring entrepreneurs. No other institution, public or private, does a better job of reaching people who have been left behind in today's economy, have failed to reach their potential in the city public school system, or who simply need help navigating an increasingly complex world. End quote. Why on earth would a responsible body wish to diminish those opportunities or narrow those doors? I've heard it said that because the library has a reserve account, that they should use that to weather these cuts. And sometimes an idea is so asinine, cruel, and absurd that it deserves closer examination. So if we are to punish institutions who prepare for inevitable damages or necessary improvements, then let's do it to individuals as well. I'm working on a referendum. The draft goes whereby upon election, an official must disclose their income and assets, and if those resources are above federal poverty guidelines, then that official is ineligible for payer benefits. Looking at this board of fiscally responsible individuals, surely you have the savings and assets to weather this economic crisis while we divert your pay as redundant to those who are living hand to mouth. Then when your resources are below that limit, we will gladly pay you. Those who claim these cuts are medicine should be prepared to swallow them before they give it out to others. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Holly Guffin, I'm a resident of Beltrami. 2 years ago, my husband and I settled here. Before that, my husband was in Congress for years. So we have lived in many different states and we've been patrons of many different libraries. When we move somewhere, the first thing we do is we get a library card. We also homeschool my child, and I don't buy a lot of curriculum. A lot of curriculum comes from the library. I'm not gonna take up a lot of time, but I told my 8-year-old daughter that I was coming to this meeting. So she drew this. It's her at the library. She's sitting on a beanbag and she's reading a book. She had me write a few of her favorite books.
on this, the title and everything, that was something fine here. And she came up with the slogan all by herself. Without libraries, we would be taking profits. So please support our library, not at the minimum, more than the residents of this county deserve it. My name is Amanda Reed. I am a lifelong resident of Beltrami County. I came to talk to you today, like many people, about the library. We are in difficult and unprecedented times in modern history, and our wallets have not been so tight in decades. I commend the commissioners' proactive behavior in trying to balance our budget. That being said, and please request you reconsider drastically refunding our local library. With the proposed budget, our libraries will use fundamental programs that benefit not only the average resident, but the most vulnerable among us. The elderly, the disabled, the poor, and the homeless all rely on those programs provided by the libraries to live normal and productive lives and free our borders. When I was a child, we were not well off. My siblings and I relied on the Bemidji Library for our knowledge and entertainment. When I was 13 years old, I became severely ill and became bedridden. Over the 7 years I was bedridden, I read hundreds, if not thousands, of books. If you want to know the checkout limit for books at any one time, it's 100 books. I found that out. It was thanks to these books and the kindness and companionship of the local librarian that I was able to maintain my mental health during a time of immense stress, fear, and isolation, similar to what many faced in 2020. When my health began to improve, the library was a main contributor to my ability to find and obtain a job, allowing me to research jobs online and print resumes for free. Where our county human services fell short, the Bemidji Library picked up. The first apartment I ever rented had poor insulation. My first winter, I frequented the library for warmth that homemade blanket igloos just couldn't provide. I was able to use the internet service again to learn ways to improve my living situation. Our county public libraries provide a diverse amount of public services. Over the last several years, the libraries have expanded their services to strengthen our community. More than 160,000 people pay to the Bemidji Library alone each year. There has already been discussion on how to offset these losses if the proposed budget goes through. One of which is no new reading materials will be purchased, including to replace lost and damaged products. Unfortunately, the proposed budget is such a drastic cut that dropping new reading materials will not even put a dent in savings. The libraries will also be forced to lay off staff. The Black Duck Public Library only has 2 staff members, one part-time, one full-time. Cutting staff there is effectively closing Black Duck Public Library. But instead of actually closing immediately, the building itself will cost taxpayers for upkeep until it is eventually deemed wasteful and officially closed. Hours for both locations will be drastically reduced. The Bemidji Public Library is currently open 6 days a week. Operating hours will decrease to about 3 days per week. Not only will new reading materials be cut, but many of the public services that the library provides will be lost or reduced, including computer services, the book hold system, the legal aid kiosk, and children's story time. Free prints for resumes and tax documents will be charged, and who knows how sharply the cost of printing will increase. The library currently provides meeting places for homeschoolers, social service meetups, counseling, employment rehabilitation, technology lessons, Zoom court meetings, and group and club meetings and lessons. The Bemidji Public Library has repeatedly been a safe place for our homeless. During the 2021 extreme weather, the library placed staff as to remain open in hopes that they could provide refuge for the homeless to not freeze to death. Our Beltrami County Library staff are compassionate, considerate, and kind. The public library system is integral to a healthy community. So the purpose of a budget is to cut, their budget cut is to trim excess staff, not to cut out good need. As of this date, the library petition has generated nearly 500 signatures in 3 days. Our constituents do not want to lose the efficacy of our libraries for the sake of saving 25% of our entire county budget. My name is Linda Rose, and I live at 6645 San Jose Road Northeast and 10th Drive. I live about 20 miles out of town, and I try to limit myself to move no more than 2 visits to town a week, but not with the gas is so expensive. When I come to town, I normally make it a point to stop at the library. I have Wi-Fi at home, and I have a PC, but I do not have a printer, and I do not have a copier. So I rely on the library for those services. If anything really brought it to, I think, everyone's awareness, COVID and young people going to school. Many of children don't have internet access, they don't have PC, so they relied on the schools to provide those tools. And in some cases in the state, they had to drive to the school and be able to park in the parking lot in order to have access. So that's something I think that's very important. Yesterday I was able to spend some time on the phone with Tim, Richard, and Reed, and I really appreciated the time you spent listening to me. A number of the things that other people have brought up, I had in my notes, so I'll just go over those. But a very real concern of mine is there's a growing divide throughout the country, but in this area, too, we're a very poor county, and there's a growing divide, I think, between the haves and the have-nots. The Kichigami library system has 9 libraries in Beltrami County or in the Bemidji area. Many of us rely on the library for using the PC. Nonprofits are able to use that large meeting room free of charge. They reserve it in advance. There are 2 small rooms for tutors to use. There's a children's reading area with many books, and they have speakers in once in a while too, that put on presentations for children. The legacy amendment helped us, get funding as long as we submitted requests or grant requests. We had some really good authors come up, William Kent Kruger, etc. So we've had different speakers come in. There's a real commitment from the community overall. I went to the book sale a few weeks ago, and I was amazed again at the huge number of books that the community donates to the library. And so they are able to make funds that way too, but a very large community involvement there. We've got the Red Door bookstore. Many of us rely on that too. If you want to see what's the latest and greatest, it's on sale in that room. Very inexpensive used books. At Christmas time, they have the Mitten Tree with the names of books they would like to, or tools, things, resources they would like to get with the price tag attached. So people coming into the library can say, "Oh, well, I'm willing to pay for that book," and they help the library, get new materials without having to have any out-of-pocket expense. Again, I'll just mention something that was alluded to earlier too with the homeless. Reed, I know that you've done a lot with other community members to address that, but it still remains an issue in the Bemidji area, and especially in the wintertime, it's really, really a good resource for the homeless to be able to come in somewhere that's warm, read the newspaper, use access to PC. And they usually have puzzles out on some of the tables so that people can keep warm and keep their mind busy, etc. And agile and use the puzzles. So those are just some of the points that I really wanted to put a plug in for the library that maybe other people haven't covered that much. Thank you very much. Hello, my name is Caleb Campbell Becker. I am also a lifelong resident of Beltrami County, and I live here in Northern Township. I came for the same reason as a lot of people here, to urge you to please not cut the funding for the public libraries. The library has been a huge part of my life, my entire life. My earliest memories are going to story time at the library. Having books read to me, and then we would do a little craft or project related to the book, meet other children of age, get to socialize. I developed a voracious love of reading, and I went to the library weekly, if not more than that, my entire childhood. My family was not incredibly poor, but also not incredibly well off. We did not have a computer at home. We did not have internet access. And so as I got older, I used the public library for my schoolwork. I used it to do research and to write my papers, to print off my papers. I eventually used the public library to help apply for colleges. And once I got into colleges, I used the public library to apply for financial aid and scholarships. I could not be where I am in my life today without the public library. And I understand that these budget cuts would not close the library entirely, but it would drastically reduce the public's ability to access these tools. I won't go over everything that's already been said because I think there's been many wonderful points made. But I do want to bring up one thing. I raised some of these concerns in an email yesterday, Mr. Luchek, and I received a reply in which he wrote, whichever commissioner leaked this 35% proposed cut did so to alarm and cause drama, which they enjoy doing. I find that wording to be very problematic. The idea that this was a leak, that kind of suggests that we were going to cut the library's budget for 35% in the dark, in secret, so that all these people wouldn't know about that. And I find that very disturbing. As you can see, there is huge community support for the library. It's very important that we know what's going on in our community so that we can all come and share our voices, because we love our library and it needs to stay open as it is. Thank you.
All right, well, if there are no other folks that would like to approach the board in regards to the library, okay.
Take a brief minute. I'm Mary Solomon, president of the East Latin and a long-time library board. Thank the board for listening tonight. And I just want to say, amen. Everything that's been said already. But I just wanted to make a point of letting you folks know that there's quite a few of us here from LACTA tonight also. So just wanted to be aware of that. And our small library would be affected even more so than the community. So want to make you aware that there's a lot of LACTA representation for board members and citizens.
My name is Dr. Martin Dees. I'm president of Old Village Christian College. We have a library, and I have a library where I live in this township. Just speaking to express my appreciation for your service with our community. Being a leadership position these days is very difficult thing, and fiscal responsibility and balanced budgets are a very great challenge. Appreciate that. Philosophically, I'm speaking in support of books. I understand from my research that the average American's attention span is now 8 seconds. A goldfish has 9 seconds. That's driven partly by our access to media, and I'm supportive of all media. But also I'm a lifelong reader and grateful for access to books. And we'd love to see our community have continued access to books. There's a difference. I receive data and information from a wide variety of sources, but there's something calming and refreshingly introspective and restful and thoughtful about working with a book. So I'm grateful that our community has a library. We'd love to see it continue in its most robust form. Thank you.
Are there any other?
Hello, my name's Gavin Reed. I'm
I live in 1019 Park Avenue, I'm on the children's pastor in town. So I work with a lot of little kids. In fact, I make the joke, usually I know more third graders than adults. And part of my job is, when you work in humanities, when you work with people, you can't measure an accident. On paper, a lot of this stuff may seem like a good idea because you don't always get it right. In fact, there's opportunities where I spend 6-7 hours for something working with kids that I do for 15 minutes. And that seems a little bit ridiculous at times, and it feels that way. But it makes a difference, even for one person, one kid, one child. At the end of the day, it may not be financially make sense, on paper it doesn't make sense, but I guarantee that one person, it makes sense. For a community this size at 5 p.m., when a lot of people are still working, look at the turnout. All of them have something business, and to them, they do community, and please don't press the button. Thank you. Are there any others?
No, for listening. My name is Cameron Conan. I have served in the Beltrami area as a teacher and educator in the capacities in which I could. And when I see children with books, it gives me hope for the future. It gives me a way to see light in the ideas being generated in one person's mind. This is the most valuable and one of the most valuable cornerstones of our nation. Free dissemination of information and ideas, communication technology, access to all people equally. It's the cornerstone of this free society. I've spent time in Canada, Mexico, and Australia in the school systems there. Every civilized society supports a library system and these ideals that reflect once again the very first amendment of our Constitution. And community in the county's commitment and reflection to that very first amendment has been strong in this area. I have needed the library system in my life and continue to do so, and therefore have begun to serve and volunteer to support the libraries as a board member of the Blackfoot Library and a volunteer. And again, thank you for listening, and please uphold that commitment to that very first amendment.
All right, seeing no other coming forward, other citizens here to address the board on an item that's not in regards to the library. All right.
Yeah. Actually, I'm in Northern Township. I'm Gary Barnard. I'm board here. I just want to thank welcome you here to Northern Township. And I wanted to thank the board for the support for the project that we've got in line to run sewer and water up to the north side of the lake. The board really appreciates the support of the county board on this project. As everybody knows, it's ran into a few glitches with the legislation getting funding and stuff. But we are still pretty optimistic that things can move forward. So really appreciate working with the county on this, and I'll continue to do so. Thanks. Welcome to Northern Township.
Thank you, Gary. And we often like to try to get out to the community, summer once, twice to visit, other townships, to create that dialogue and the partnership. So, I think our next one is going to be. Yeah. Well, before everybody, I see some people leaving, some closing comments in regards to tonight's, public input. Normally, it is the board's practice that we do not, really respond to comment, we take this opportunity to gather, information or, comments, so, that is why there wasn't no response, from the council. But we do appreciate you coming out, and I know that, this issue is pretty. This issue is, really near and dear to a lot of folks, and cutting budgets is never easy. It's never, our intention, as a county board, we try to be, fiscally, prudent and responsible with your money. So this isn't, something that, isn't set yet, but we will be setting a preliminary budget, September 20th. The library, so I believe, there's a lack of information, a lack of communication. We did, the budget committee did send a letter to, the library, but we have not received any type of response. And I strongly believe that communication is key. If we're not communicating with each other, how are we going to know the information? I personally learned a lot, more from the emails, phone calls, tonight's meeting of what's really going on at the library. We don't know, a lot of information, whether they're reserved or allocated or not allocated, how much reserves they have. So they're just, I believe, we will be discussing those issues at our September 6th meeting. And being that is going to be on the agenda, there will not be an opportunity for public comment. I want to make you aware of that. Again, thanks for coming out. Appreciate the response and feedback. You're more than welcome to stay and listen to the rest of our agenda. We have the regulate initiative that we're gonna honor. But I mean, if you want to leave, that's your discretion. So maybe we could take a 3-minute break to allow folks to. All right, well, we will move on with our regular agenda. I will ask for a motion for the approval of the regular agenda.
The only, Mr. Chair, the only change that I have is I'm gonna call, 12-12-3, which is the dialogue with citizens, and 12-D, which is the administrative report. And does that change?
Right, I have a motion by Commissioner Anderson. Is there a second?
I'll second it, Mr. Chair.
Second by Commissioner Olson. Any further discussion? All right, I think the only comment that I make is the dialogue with citizens, you know, that's been a separate thing from the citizens addressing the board. This is, as I mentioned, this is an opportunity for the local folks, you know, in northern or whoever wants to talk with the board or have discussions. So that would be 12A, notice if you want to have any type of conversation with the board, you know, the you know, this is an opportunity for us to have conversations. With that, I'll ask for a vote. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Approval of the consent agenda.
I'll move the consent agenda, Mr. Chair.
A motion by Commissioner Lukic, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Commissioner Godwin. Any further discussion? Hearing none. I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. All right, first on the agenda. Tonight's agenda is like 90 some pages long, so bear with me for a second. The Red Lake Nation Tribal Initiative Award, Achievement Award, Becky Secord
And Sherry Goodwin.
and Sherry Goodwin.
Everybody. Hi, everybody.
Then for a second. So want to welcome Sherry to the executive director of
Open Midwest, Vidano, and Honeywood, which means 15 out of our relatives, formerly known as Family and Children's Services.
So Sherry has been a great partner in all of the work we've done with the nation, with the tribal initiative. A few months ago, I put out a request to be a recipient of the NACO Achievement Award for the tribal initiative. And NACO is the National Association of Counties. And I'll just read that briefly and then let Sherry have the floor for a minute. I do want to say a thank you to the people in the room that participated in this, to all of you, Glenn, David Hanson, and many others that I couldn't. But anyway, I'll read to you what got sent to NACO. The category of human services and the year was 2022. Beltrami County Health and Human Services is a local government agency that provides an array of services for people living within the boundaries of Beltrami County. Red Lake Nation is a sovereign tribal nation that provides a similar array of services. A majority of Red Lake Nation lies within the boundaries of Beltrami County. For decades, there was confusion and frustration over service responsibility, financial responsibility, oversight responsibility, jurisdiction, and cultural needs related to the services provided. The level of frustration related to these issues multiplied as the years passed. In 2015, Red Lake Nation hired a new director for Family and Children's Services, Sherry Goodwin. She inherited this history of government to government frustration. Beltrami County leadership also wanted a new solution for decades-old problems. From this shared historic frustration and hope for better solution, new relationships were forged. In the end, what happened is Red Lake Nation became what's known as an initiative tribe.
What was known as Initiative Tribe, where were you?
I was right here saying in a
Oh, yeah.
nutshell.
Initiative Tribe in 2021. In a nutshell, this means they have a direct relationship with the Minnesota Department of Human Services. The Red Lake Nation is able to work directly with their relatives and work with the state of Minnesota on policy requirements and funding.
This has served to increase the sovereign status of Red Lake Nation, improve the relationship between local governments, and provide the cultural services envisioned by Red Lake Nation. Congratulations to the Beltrami County Board for your support of the Red Lake Nation Initiative, and to Becky for continued support. But I know this is like big even to say this, because when Becky submitted it and I read it, I'm like, what? But it is true, you know, there have been decades of frustrations, you know, she has old archives, I have old archives, and so I've been kind of back and forth. But today it's a win-win for Red Lake Nation and Beltrami County for this Child Welfare Initiative. And I want to thank each and every one of you for your support, and of course to the members of the community, because it's a big deal, it really is. And thank you, Becky, for supporting us. Next is adult services.
Yeah. Overthink on.
If anybody wants to join, you know, you're more than welcome.
I wanted to say to the future of child and business for too long. We've been intuitive approaches, so we're really working together on changing laws at the macro level, and the state level. Because it's a fluid system, it really is. So how are they going to work together? Sorry, I got that. Come on, Becky.
There's a photographer who wants to set up jobs.
We can put it sideways, so it's spinner.
Okay, everybody's looking at me, right? Okay, thank you.
Say there we go.
Yes. Yes. Love you, Tim. Thank you. Yep.
You get to keep that.
Well, before we move on, you know, I want to say, you know, thank you to Becky, you know, yeah, Barry, you know, the Red Lake Tribal Council. You know, I feel the same way as Becky, you know, I mean, it's pretty emotional. You know, I first got elected in 2012, seated in 2013, and seeing, you know, the relationship between the county and the tribe at the time, you know, and providing services and how it seemed like it was us against them, but, you know, over time, you know, the relationship building got better and better, and now, you know, we're supporting each other, and there's, you know, I think this is just the beginning, you know, of you know, many opportunities, you know, where we can work together, because, you know, I strongly believe we're in this together. You know, it's no longer us against them. You know, it's proof that people recognize that if we work together, great things can happen. So, thank you, guys, ladies, and you know, keep up the great work. I appreciate it. All right. It's always good to have good news. So, the license center employees offered. Oh, Joe. Hi.
The last time I was here, I did an update on the license center, and during that update, I had mentioned we were in the process of completing interviews on our second round of applications. We had opened it up a second time and completed those interviews. We have a candidate that has the certification and the experience required to step into the license center and process every transaction on day one. And what I'm asking for is to extend an offer to that candidate that would place them equivalent to other members of the license center with that same experience and certification. So I'm asking to extend the offer at step 5 on our pay scale.
Mr. Chair, so are you saying that this new employee, prospective new employee would then not have to go through a lot of the training and the certification process and be able to start sooner, or,
Correct. The training has already been complete.
oh, they've already done.
They've already done the
Through
training
us.
through,
That's okay, great.
through elsewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
So it's just being another quote.
Yeah,
I think it's good to be on this side.
sure, I think we accept the request to start the person at step 5.
We got a motion by Commissioner Godfrey, second by Commissioner Arms, and any further discussion?
I just want to say that this is a good example. We're always hearing how expensive it is to train new employees. So it's been nice to see that at the end of the point. So it's a great idea.
And then the other piece is that this will get us to be able to open up in the critical time of the day. Will be essentially fully staffed.
This is.
That's huge.
That was gonna be my part.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's huge.
Yeah. All right, there are no further questions or comments. I will, call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Thank you. All right. I'm not back to that. I said there's now something, it's the ratification of the union. Okay. We'll continue on to ratification of union contracts for 2022 through 2025.
Good evening, Commissioners. So I'm here today with the first 3 of 8 contracts that we're in the process of negotiating. We started this process actually in April with the first meeting with our first union. And we now have tentative agreements with and ratified tentative agreements with 3 of those unions. Those being the Teamsters licensed deputies, the LELS sergeants, and the local 49 public works group. The contract calls for a 3% market adjustment effective July 1st of 2022. 4% increase in 2023, a 3% increase in 2024, and a 2% increase in 2025. It also involves changing our steps 9 and 10 to be 3% steps and getting rid of the 15 and 20-year requirement to achieve those steps. The flex dollar or insurance contribution that we contribute to employee health insurance and other benefits is supposed to go up by $100 in 2023, $50 in 2024, and $50 a month in 2025. All 3 of the contracts also call for adding Juneteenth as a holiday, if and when the state of Minnesota makes that an official holiday in their by statute. The individual contracts also have some additional language that we negotiated in. I can go through those. They're included in your packet. But for example, the on-call pay for the Teamsters deputies group will increase to $50 a day, and that's to keep it in line with what other employees are currently receiving for that same service. Longevity pay will be sunsetting for our deputies because we're changing longevity to the top of the pay scale in September 10. We are sunsetting longevity for retired after January 1st. We are looking at increasing shift differential from 75 cents an hour to $1 an hour for those law enforcement staff that are working between 6 p.m. and 6 a.m. And then increasing the uniform allowance by $50 a year for the uniform. The sergeants have very similar increases. The shift differential, the on-call and the longevity pay are the same. And in the public works contract, the longevity pay will also sunset for that group. We are adding an MOU to the contract to allow for comp time appeal, something that this group has not had and we requested. It will be in the form of an MOU where it's going to be reviewed at the end of the contract and for make sure that it is still working the way it was designed to. We are removing a provision under their sick leave where they are allowed doctor's appointments to be not accredited to their sick leave. So now those times will be coming out of their sick leave balances and increasing their safety and clothing allowance by $25 each per month. and also updating federal pension fund language, based on the county attorney's review that we've done. So I'm asking for those three contracts to be, approved tonight, and, we are still in negotiations with, one other group, and we have tentative agreements with four, so that I'm hoping that they will, we're told they'll be voting on those. Moving forward on this bill. And for the non-union, group as well.
Chair, I would move to accept this.
We have a motion by Commissioner Anderson, for a second. Also, second by Commissioner Olson, any further discussion?
I just have a comment with the amount of time that it takes to negotiate. It's nice to see us coming toward the finish line. And Linda does a mammoth job with this, trying to getting it all prepared. And each and every single person gets a sheet saying where they are on the week and what difference it makes to them. So it certainly provides the employees satisfaction as well. So thank you. Dylan.
There are no other comments. I will call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. County Road Safety Plan. Approved.
The topic I have in front of you has got two parts to it. But it all revolves around the new federal grant, safety program out there. Safe Streets for All, is what it's called. It's a new program that was passed with the federal competition bill that was passed. I talked to the board about it earlier this summer, spring, of the potential. Listed some projects that I thought might be eligible for it. And so now I started digging into it, and they come up with more information, the application, and some webinars. That kind of what it's going to take to apply for that grant. First thing is the grant is split into two things. One is to get money to create a county road safety plan. We already have that. However, our plan does not meet their criteria to apply for the second part of that grant, which is actual projects, money to implement projects. Going through their criteria, we have a worksheet, different things that it would take to make our county road safety plan meet their criteria is what I have in the attached resolution. And it does a few things. It commits us to work towards the goal of zero roadway fatalities. It sets a target when we want to reach zero. Some time ranges on when projects or strategies are implemented, how they are prioritized, and then means of measuring that progress. So neither is, yeah, it's good goals to set, and we have zero fatalities on our roadways, with some timelines to it. But that's the first part that we need to do to be eligible to apply for grants. So, stop there and give them a question.
I'm curious, I didn't see it. Oh, 23rd, is that the goal? No. What is the date certain that we selected for when we would hit? The goal of implementing
Through this.
So I'm sorry, I don't mean to put you on the spot. To when did the county put down as the year or the date that we would hit zero deaths? So because it's kind of an aspirational goal, right? So
that would be the first. Now therefore be resolved that Beltrami County has the goal of reducing severe crashes that result in traffic fatalities and serious injuries by one per year with an ultimate goal of 0 traffic fatalities on county roads in 6 years. Right now, we average 2. On our county roads, we average 2 fatalities a year.
Craig has a follow-up question.
The first criteria that I see, or first consideration for this is the County State Highway 15 for the section from 26 to 32. Basically being reconfigured similar to Cardinal Road or County Road 9 with the center buffer that we got a lot of grief over. I know Commissioner Olson got a lot of grief over that because of it being a no passing zone for many miles and causing issues with buses and their stop arm not really working because it's a double yellow line and the plowing being a problem. And in on that case, it was also a pedestrian issue because there was not enough shoulder. Here we have a wider road, so the shoulder issue could be addressed probably, but all those other issues would still be a problem. And that, so I'm concerned and not necessarily in favor of doing this. I would much rather see the state providing all its money for actually fixing our roads and not doing these kind of unusual projects.
So that was the second part of the agenda bill, I guess.
So can
Support the
we
resolution.
do part of the agenda and then, because I have the same concern as Commissioner Gosvick, with their center, I'm not too sure if we went over a while when I looked at the community. I don't know, I would like to get some community input before we move forward on such a measure. Going through it once, with County Road 9, it was difficult. And I want to make sure that, we do our due diligence and move forward with creating that center buffer.
Well, I was sorry to interrupt, but I was going to explain those projects. I guess that's the second part.
So approving this first part is not.
Approving the
accepting the second
resolution
part.
is just going to make us eligible to apply for the projects, and then I was going to talk about what projects.
Okay, so we're not tying our hands to any ground.
That's good. I think we're all feeling awful.
The resolution helps make our county road safety plan meet their criteria. So then we can move to the second part of their grant, which is we can apply for money for the projects. So then that's resolution and that I was hoping then we could talk about the projects.
But we wouldn't be able to use it on any projects unless they were like the buffer project. Isn't that correct? We wouldn't be able to use that money for any project.
Correct.
We'd have to use it on either the buffer project or the second priority, which was a roundabout, I believe.
Correct. So then we're doing both.
Yeah, the roundabout, I don't know that would be as contentious if we could say that, okay, we can pass it as long as the first option is not, part of the deal, then I could probably support it.
Yeah. Well, the resolution doesn't have any projects listed.
But I would want to signify that this first consideration is not something that I would, that's not on the table.
Yeah, the resolution is a separate document. Yes, that I have submitted.
Right.
The agenda bill was just the information. So
I can support, the resolution, And then he's got a second part. Yeah, but the second part, not at this time.
I guess that's where I was.
So that's why you want us to vote on the resolution first, and then we can talk about the projects, and that would be a separate vote about whether or not we want to move forward on those projects with those restrictions.
So. Doing that,
I guess I'll make the motion to approve the resolution.
we have a motion by Commissioner Olson, is there a second? I think zero is up. The lofty goal, and I think I will second that as long as it doesn't tie our hands with politics. Second by Commissioner Anderson, any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I,
Motion carried 4-1.
So, Mr. Chair, if I could ask, what is the criteria? I mean, 26 to 32, there's not a lot on County Road 15 basically from Grade 5 Road right up to 32. There's not a whole lot of traffic, is there up there? And what are the, what's the criteria that makes the MnDOT engineers suggest having that buffer?
Well, like, good,
Or am I, if you want to, yeah,
back up just a little bit.
absolutely.
So the projects need to be in our county road safety plan to be eligible for this grant. And so initially, there was a lot of different projects that I had hoped to be able to apply for. But with more information on it, they have to be specifically listed in that county road safety. And so looking through a county road safety plan, I'm not gonna waste a week's worth of effort on an application for $100,000 project. We have funding sources within the state, other federal funds that we can apply for. And they're the yellow ones that are in the 5-year plan that you see. They're not easy application process for them. So I went for the big projects. I looked at the big projects that are in there. And those first two, and with the center buffer on 15 and roundabout on 6 are the two big projects. So I guess that's why I picked those ones out and here to discuss them. The county road safety plan again is proactive safety projects, and so it's going to prevent crashes. It's not necessarily that we're, again, having the calendar up right now, we're trying to prevent that from ever happening. The center buffer project that is being proposed is from number 22 to 26. It's roughly 7 miles long. It's on Irvin Avenue. The center buffer project. And really what it comes down to is you've got a shoulder on the right hand side only. Center buffer puts a shoulder on the left hand side. Center of the road. And you have rumbles, you got edge strikes. And it gives you that buffer to help keep traffic stay in line. It's very similar, it would be very similar to number 9. However, there are other design details that we have since learned from the complaints and things we see in number 9 that we could take into consideration. We don't need to have, there's not a requirement of how much you have in the middle of that buffer. So we could shrink that buffer down and still have plenty of wide shoulders out there, 4, 5, 6 foot wide shoulders for pedestrian places. The section of 15 is, right now it's 40 feet wide. So we can do a 6 and a 12 and we have 4 and 12 and 6. So that we still have plenty of room on the shoulders for the pedestrian. So that's one big concern that we did with the mine project. The second one was passing, no passing. That is the intent in the center buffer is to prevent the people from passing and getting into a potential head-on crash. The criteria we had asked about why that segment is considered. It's the level of traffic is higher, and then there's lots of the density of entrances and accesses for people is higher across our system. Those are the criteria that they looked at, and so you got more accesses, there are more people turning out on the road, and more people traveling on the road, you got that higher potential of crash. Very similar with the increase in traffic that you have on the road, the types of crashes change. If you're going from a road where you don't only drive around the road, one time you're gonna get in a crash if you run off the road. As you get more people driving that road, now you got the potential of you're gonna swirl out the lane and you're gonna hit somebody. More traffic coming against you, the more opportunity you're gonna get into a crash. You have turning movements. You have turn in front of somebody, someone's gonna turn out in front of you. All those types of crashes increase the more traffic. So that's why they pick a higher travel road on our system. And with the higher accesses, there's potential for those types of crashes. And those are the risk factors for potential for those types of crashes. Injuries. So that's kind of the why that segment was suggested for the center buffer. Similarly, down on 6, the roundabout, kind of the same thing. For that one, the roundabout is on our number 11 and number 6, which is 6 and 15th Street.
Adams and 15th. That one there, it's, now we're looking at an intersection, so the second intersection. That one there is the risk factors are the higher AUT in multiple directions. So there's lots in that intersection there. You have a lot of left turn traffic. So that's coming from those towards from opposite coming from the middle school, heading to the high school, making that left. And similarly, coming south and making that left in. It's very busy, especially during school session. Get cars back up there. And so the roundabout, yeah, helps deal with those left turn traffic. Yeah, that's kind of a quick summary of the two projects that are on our list. The third is a long stretch. It's not in our 5-year plan as a reconstruction project, but there's some smaller projects that were listed for that section of 20 on the north side of the lake. Just knowing that that's a high priority project, it could be an expensive project for you. That's why I put it on my list. And that's going to be a stretch to try to make that one fit. But if I thought there was one that was trying to stretch or reach more, I would want. So that's, I guess, the kind of the reason why for the food project. Most people don't have to vote on it. Well, I guess I would, I don't know, a vote or whatever, just give me some direction because I'm not gonna waste my time applying for the project, funds for the project if not. It's not gonna be an easy application process. And so that's why I guess I'm asking for some direction before I.
So look,
Let me see if I got this right. MnDOT will help us build our stuff if we do something new.
Well, this is federal. It's not.
I'm sorry. The Department of Transportation, whatever it is. But we have to do a plan that they feel is a good safety plan, which in our community, we've determined that there's a lot of flaws in that. There's just a lot of flaws, and Commissioner Gottfried already said them, so I'm not gonna repeat them, but there's flaws in that design. You can't pass for 5 miles. You get behind somebody going 32 miles an hour, you're behind them for 5 miles. It's just, they just tie your hands, you know, it's almost like a funded mandate. They say, well, here's the carrot, we'll dangle this money out there. If you really need your roads fixed, then do it like this. My second question, has this become a popular design route across our country? Are they doing this wide buffer, no passing? Because when we did it, we were on the experimental end, right? We were like one of the, there wasn't a lot more of those out there in our state, right?
There was not a lot that you could point to, however, they,
Is it becoming more popular?
I guess I'm not sure they noticed yet. If I haven't asked. So a couple answers to the questions that you had. Yeah, the federal funding nowadays is pots. You are going after different pots of money. If it's for trails, if it's for safety, if it's for
Safe routes to school,
you know, and there's all these different pots, and so you gotta have your projects. that meet that
focus on
criteria.
pedestrians, focus on bicycles, focus on.
As the transportation bill did put some general monies that come to the state, that can be library, and some of it trickles down to the district, trickles down to the counties. So there is some that is unrestricted, not in a pot that comes to our district. But the big ones, the big dollars, the big pots out there, there was a lot that we're not even holding for. The city and MnDOT just got awarded $18 million for raising that for the 197. That was a huge pot, like, you know, that other transportation.
And it required roundabout.
That one was, I don't remember the criteria, it was certain capacity. The second, I guess, on popularity was types of projects, like the center buffer. The reason they were being suggested in our plan. Yeah, it's not required that we have to do this, but these must be suggested, and it is a proven that it's a safety project. So it's not just that it's, unique or new to Minnesota or Beltrami County, because they've been done in the research.
That's why they're in our county safety plan, they're not just county engineer, with this idea, it's. they're approving things.
commend you for looking for ways to get more money into the county. I just don't think that at the expense of our county residents, convenience and potential safety issues with the bus arms and some of the other stuff that on County 9 where they didn't have room for pull off to the side here, that would be a different story, but I'm not in favor of the buffer deal at all. I would be fine with it looks like the only option we have to be able to get this money then if we totally say no to the buffer would be the roundabout. Do you think that it's worth your time to go for it if that's the only one on the table?
That one's in our county safety.
Right.
So it's.
That's our only option, really, because the other one says along that not in our county road plan is right now.
The reconstruction project.
Yeah.
It's in there like,
Yeah,
great, well, in the county road safety plan, it's on there, clear right.
yeah. So really, would that be worth your time then, Bruce, if
Well,
you're only going for the roundabout?
I have no idea, I guess is for sure.
Okay,
I guess if I do the roundabout project application, and I feel that, once I get through it, that I can try to make the case for the next one, I would have to, I was thinking I was doing it. I believe I can make the case for it, I guess it's what trying. If it's better than 20. Yeah. So if that, but if it's, if I get through the process of the roundabout, then it's not gonna be the time, then that's, I guess I wanted to. That's step into it and, Mr. Chair, I agree with that. I couldn't support the first one, but the other two.
It'll.
But, I would think. On point, yeah. I would just.
non-bufferable.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, I think on County Road 9 on Cardinal, I understand there's cutouts like every 50 feet on that stuff. So I understand the reason, and I think if we had designed the road differently so that there were decent shoulders for the bus issue and for pedestrians, we probably wouldn't have gotten the plaque that was there. I mean, there would be people that were upset that they wouldn't be able to pass. I think the old 71 or the Bemidji going from Knife River to the Northwoods Landing, there you've got cutouts every 25 feet. That would be a good area to have no passing, right? But when looking at 15 up there, it's a straight shot. And I was looking just at the satellite. I don't know when the satellite photos imagery was taken from, but it didn't look like there's all that many cutouts, and then the driveways or whatever. So it's hard to up there to in my mind, and I'm no engineer. Hard in my mind to legitimize why you would have no passing for that entire straight shot. It's of that 7 miles, it looks like about 6.5 of it is just one straight line. So I don't know if that's really where we need it. But you can say traffic counts. I'll prefer you on that.
Sorry, I'm talking to myself because 3 segments on our car road safety plan after that sent them up with this. Yes.
Yeah. But as some of you use that a lot. I mean, there's a lot of traffic, there's a lot of pedestrians, there's a lot of cutouts, and it is a dangerous area to pass, which is why I do it really, really fast to hurry up and get back.
I'd approve that if in 4 years you agree and sign a document that says you're gonna be a county commissioner. Deal? Well, I'm not. You just get it from 5 commission.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, well, Bruce, I appreciate the time. And the board presenting.
I don't need a vote.
You don't need an official vote? Okay. You got enough consensus?
I got it.
You got no buffer.
We have the money, but no buffer project. is what we're directing, right? Is that what we're getting?
Basically, it'd have to be for the roundabout.
Right.
If he gets approved, and then if that one goes through, then he could try to do the county 21 on the north end of the lake as the next one. And then whoever after that.
And that's what we're in agreement on.
That work. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Anything more elaborate? Stick with the road.
Commissioner Lucas, can you remember what the record is for the longest meeting?
I think I got that one.
Yeah. County board or Kitchen Regional Library? Kitchen Regional Library started at 6 o'clock, ended at 11:45. That was my lunch. And then a short drive. Just an hour and 45.
I had one that went longer than that, 30 soon.
I don't know. So
All right,
put it in the submission box.
we will continue on to a dialogue with the citizen. Now is an opportunity to ask questions. Yeah. I wonder how things work at the county or anything. That would be the time. Bruce, you wanna come back up?
I was looking at the bill for the budget for previous years, and it wasn't very, at least what I found, very detailed. You guys have other budgets to look at that have a lot more detail for what projects and how to stand out.
Well, you know, and
No, I have a power.
Yeah.
Part of them.
The county does have line item budgets where every single line item object code is specified. It's not included because it in the overview budget that you're probably referring to that you can get off the website, because it would be extraordinarily long. I think it's probably 500, 600 pages maybe on a line item basis. But if you have a specific question about a line item or about a department, group of line items, we can talk to the auditor treasurer and get you whatever information you need. She'll love that I said that.
Mr. Chair, as a new county commissioner, I used to pay for and request a disc of that. And I don't know if that's still available to the county auditor. If it's available to the general public. But I used to request that as commissioner, and I don't know if it's reserved for electeds only and not to the general public. We'd have to check with like David, the county attorney. Is that something that's for public perusal by the general public?
I assume it is. Yes, but it's got to look at that.
Our financial statements and our budget would be public information, public data. I have never burned a disc with that information on, but I'm sure someone in MIS could have, or could, and probably did for you as well. Our summary budget just summarizes the main components of our budget into the categories that go on our financial statement. But we do have, like Tom Barry said, each line item budget for the last few years. If you were looking for something specific, I'd be more than happy to help you go through it.
When I was 15, I asked my school district for their annual budget, and back then, you know, there were no discs or whatever, and they gave me and it was about that thick. I forget how many pages it was on the old green and white printout, and they, you know, it's public information, and they didn't have a policy about charging citizens, which I'm sure they got after that, because that was, they had two printed out budgets, and they gave me one of them, and I was too young to understand any of it. But it just shows who I've been for a long time.
Slinky with it.
But your dad a logger.
Well, you can't stay.
I'm not that old. So I don't know if you're-
Wow.
Yeah. Look it up in the function.
So I want to make a comment that, we sometimes it doesn't. It may appear that we don't do wrong or whatever, but really, we really do, we like to have fun, and laugh and, so. I think that just makes our work a little easier if we can all get along. There's oftentimes there are issues that don't agree with, with each other. And sometimes there are that, maybe surprise ourselves, but, it's just, part of county government, wanting to help people and serving our residents. Part of the process. Question.
On my way to board meeting for the Blackett Library, and I was going to try to do anything that I could bring them in terms of information about what would be most helpful for next steps. I'm not familiar with law or planning process per se, but if there's anything that I can bring that's in helpful or communication in this way or this kind of data, any suggestions that we're focusing on.
Well, I'm kind of conflicted because we took comments from the citizens in regards to the library, but this is a different,
thing.
yeah, so I don't want to.
Mr. Chair, I would just say that the executive director from KRLS is going to present to us at our next meeting. I imagine that the branch managers from each branch will be there as well. And Tom will probably be in community, our administrator will probably be in communication with them about what they need to bring, because they've already been asked for information. So I think if we gave you a laundry list of items, it'd be a little bit redundant, because I think they already know what they're going to be bringing to us in September to talk about their budget and reserves.
And that's one thing.
Honestly, together.
Is that your time? Any other comments? Hearing none, we will move on to 12B, Administrator's Report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I enjoyed my week off, but I'm paying the price this week, so I'm not sure I'll do that again. Thank you kindly, though, for the time off. I have, just because of that, a brief update for you. I just want to remind you all that the AMC Fall Policy Conference, if you're interested, will be September 14th through 16th at the Arrowwood Conference Center in Alexandria. If you'd like to attend that, just let me know. I know one of you have done that. I'm working on arrangements for that, but if anyone else would like to attend, shoot me an email or let me know in passing and get you signed up for that. The Human Resources Director already indicated that we have 7 agreements either ratified or in tentative agreement form with the 8 unions that we contract with. So that's really great news. And we expect the last union to probably give us a tentative agreement before the month end. So things are looking good there. And you'll start to see the remaining of those contracts come in for your approval, probably the next meeting and perhaps the meeting after that. As it relates to the budget committee has finished its work, is formalizing what will be a recommendation to the board. And there are budget adjustments being made based on the budget committee's work, and a review that will be conducted tomorrow, actually, by the management team of those changes, so they're aware. That's something we built into the process that we didn't have last time, so that we keep directors up to date on what various adjustments there are. And then the finance department will review and do a quality control on that. The budget book will be compiled also throughout the remainder of this month. And then we'll present all of that information to you at the September 6th meeting. As we have already indicated, we'll also hope to hear from the library, KRLS, and that, the 6th is a meeting where we just present you information. There's no decision expected on the 6th of September. So it's great timing to have the library representatives come and share information and get you just more context and background. And for then you to take that and utilize that along with all the other stuff we'll be talking to you about the budget on the 6th and then deliberate, for the next couple of weeks. And then on the 20th, of course, we'll have the hearing and then the, budget, deliberate or the deliberation by you all, and hopefully a decision on the preliminary, budget and levy, which does need to be set before, the end of September. So we're on schedule currently, and things are progressing nicely. Lastly, just wanted to remind you of a couple important dates that we solidified at the last meeting we had. And it is in regard to the jail project. Just wanted to make sure you have had on your calendar the special meeting for the jail project, which is August 24th. At a different time, so it's a different time and date. That's at 9:30 in the morning till 12:30 in the afternoon. That's something that we talked about the last time we were together. It is an open public meeting, so anyone can attend. There is going to be no decisions expected at that meeting, but it is a special commission meeting, so it's open to the public. That is where the presentation of the jail needs assessment and feasibility study will be made by the consultants who've been working on that project for the last 6 months or so. They will not likely come with a recommendation at that point. What they're expected to do is just present you the information, the scenarios that they were asked to run, and the results of those scenarios. So you'll get everything that you can then use to kind of make your own decision along the way. You'll have a month before the next meeting, which will include a public hearing. And that meeting will be on September 22nd at 5 p.m. That is and that's a Thursday evening. So we're trying to work a number of meetings in over a busy month of September. And at that meeting, the consultant will come back and make a formal recommendation. So that formal recommendation by the consultant, in addition to the testimony that's provided that evening by the public, and whatever questions you have for the consultant or staff, and your own deliberations, will all kind of coalesce to what we hope will be some sort of direction or decision at that meeting. If one cannot be reached at that point, we'll just have to talk about how to work some kind of decision in fairly shortly after that meeting in order to maintain the project schedule. There are some pretty significant deadlines that come up through November and into January if we're going to keep this project moving in whatever form it is that you all decide to have it take. So that's what I have for you. I'll stand for questions.
Mr. Chair, would you just say the 24th, was it 9:30 the start time?
9:30, yeah, 9:30 in the morning until 12.
When we, on the 24th, will we get actual hard copy from the planner that we can take home and peruse? And
yes,
okay.
Talk to the consultant. He does not want to give the information out in advance. Right. Because he wants to be able to contextualize the information and explain and answer questions and make sure that's not misinterpreted. So he's been somewhat firm about that. You'll have a month to
right.
have the physical reports, and if it's not that evening, we'll make sure we burn off copies and have for you the next morning. But it will be. I'll just, now that I know that you want it for sure, I'll make sure that he has those copies available. For you
the morning of the 24th.
Yeah,
yep, perfect.
Okay, and then just recapping the 22nd. We have the public hearing.
Right. So on the
and then the jail consultant will speak.
correct. So
and then you'll reminisce about that.
correct. Yeah. So you'll get a recommendation from the jail consultant, which is what we paid for.
Yeah.
He won't present anything new because he'll have all of that information. He'll just say, okay, based on what I've studied and all these other sorts of things, here's what I would recommend the county consider and the reasons why and the pros and cons of that. And then so you'll have that piece of information. You'll also hopefully have information from the public, both in public hearing form. And also we do hope that during the period between August 24th meeting and September 22nd meeting, that we'll be continuing to solicit public input through a formal feedback loop on the county's website. So that's something that we'll be talking with the steering committee tomorrow and making sure that we have a form a repository that people can go to and submit those forms so that we can get you a synopsis of that information as well. And have everything that hopefully you'll need to be able to make an informed decision in later September.
Is the steering committee and or the justice planner, have they been made abreast of any of the finance committees, subcommittees information, and will they be taking that into any consideration when they make their actual recommendation on the 22nd?
Yes and no. So justice planners is not opining on the best cost from a perspective of, because there's lots of ways to evaluate what the recommendation is going to be. Our directive to say is what is the universal best, what is it for a population? What is it for programming, finances, for all of these different sorts of things? So they won't get in, they'll just tell you all of that stuff, but they probably won't get in and say the reason we picked this is strictly financial, right? The steering committee is definitely because I'm the liaison between the finance committee and the steering committee. I'm communicating what we are talking about in the finance committee to the steering committee. And the steering committee is taking that information and conveying it to justice planners, but in a different sort of way. Like justice planners isn't trying to figure out how to pay for this, right? That's not part of their scope. What they're saying is, based on our analysis, this is what each of the 6 or 7 scenarios would cost the county. What we've asked them is cost it out both on the capital side and cost it out on an operational side over the 30-year period if we were to take a loan for whatever it is we're going to do. So that way the board can look at this both operationally, long-term, and it can also look at capital outlay, because you might have a higher capital cost and but a lower operational cost, but with interest and over a certain term, that might be more expensive than if you had a higher operational cost and a lower capital. I mean, all of those things kind of come into play. So but there is communication going on between the steering committee, justice planners, the finance team, programming. We do provide updates at the steering committee level. The work of the finance team, however, is really more for the steering committee and the board, not justice planners. So, like I said, how to pay for whatever it is we're going to pay for is really going to take more of a front seat for the finance team, and that recommendation will come straight through to the steering committee, which will be almost separately, although together in probably similar conversations, but separately be a different recommendation on whatever you choose.
My concern obviously is that at some point, the feasibility, because this is part of needs assessment / feasibility study, and if it was $200 million, that's not feasible. At some point, money comes into the picture of feasibility.
Yeah. And I would say that we're in the ballpark. I think with what we've talked about in the finance team, and the parameters that we've had to monitor based on bond and interest rates and issuance and terms and all of that sort of thing, versus what we are seeing is likely to be the population projection for the jail and what that might look like in either a rehab of the existing facility, a do nothing, a transportation, all of the different scenarios we've asked in the model. You'll see the cost of those. So we've asked that to be presented, and you'll be able to see, okay, if we say we have this much money immediately, if that's that important to the board, these options are off the table, and then that'll help you narrow. It will be definitely a consideration to help you narrow into what you're looking for. I think it's surprising based on what I have seen so far, how similar from a cost perspective some of these scenarios are coming in at. And then you have to evaluate, okay, if costs are somewhat close, then what is the next level of decision making you want to entertain? Is it operations, staff intensity? Is it, liability? Is it other sorts of risks and considerations? Those are all things we'll be talking a lot about when we move through the project. Our hope is also that between this time period, we'll have some town hall meetings, just kind of getting the message out. The newspaper committee just met this afternoon and is trying to get a special edition of the county newsletter that would focus solely on the jail, and that we can get out pretty quickly so that we get timely feedback from the community instead of working on this big giant 8-page spread like we usually do. Let's do something quick, short, get it out, and get people aware of and engaged in the work of this project. So those are the kinds of things that we've been working on hope to see come to fruition pretty quick.
Well, it sounds like we're gonna have a pretty busy September, so. Make sure that you take time for yourself and, prepare for that and. One thing that I appreciate about the administrator over the past few months is, you forewarned us that, we're gonna have some difficult decisions to be made, as we've seen tonight, there's concerns over a budget, so I mean, that's a huge concern, that huge decision that, the jail, is another thing, so. I appreciate Tom's forewarning, I guess, and some of the tough decisions that we need to make. Any other questions for Tom? Hearing none, we will move on. Thank you.
Thank you.
Legislative, lobbying issues, and Commissioner's report.
I just want to quick say, and then they mentioned it earlier, the Headwaters Regional the Beltrami HRA is looking at possibly acquiring 3 or 4 of the buildings at Ridgeway, which I think would be really good to help save those buildings from the wrecking ball and keep them in our community as a support policy. So that's all I have.
The only comment that I have is it was enjoyable at the county fair. It was the record day, I believe, for Saturday, as far as attendance is concerned. And last and Blue Hills, were nominated as the Farm Family of the Year, and he's going in the honeybees and honey. And they were pleased to get their plaque, and from the county and Veterans Service, they all got a plaque. Good people.
So the construction then hindered the town fair.
Well, I don't know if it hindered it, it might have made them a little bit more of a maze, but it was well signed. I didn't.
I was there Friday and Saturday. It was busy.
I was there the whole time, it's been very busy, and our Beltrami Electric night at the fair on the opening night went really well.
So that's the rain, it didn't happen.
Yeah.
Increased visitors to the commercial line.
Yeah. But I'll have, after my next, our fair board meeting would have been on Monday night, but because of everybody getting swamped out there, it'll be the following Monday, so. Yeah, so next week I'll have that, so the next meeting I'll be able to do an update on what the numbers were and stuff from the fair.
All right, as for me, it's not much of a report, but our email, the fact that I should be busy, with the budget committee and with, like I mentioned, it's a tough process, and we aren't through with the process, and I strongly believe there's a lot of information. The 2 sides to the coin. And I'm looking forward to the opportunity September, to ask some of these tough questions that we're getting on. So, I just want people to be mindful that we are looking out for the best interest of our residents, and the budget process is part of that. And if you have any questions, I believe we are all available. With that, our upcoming meeting schedule, we will have as Tom said, August 24th, business planners, and then back to the county admin building for September 6th. I had chatted about today. I don't know what was up to today, or I was repeating everything twice when I was talking, and I noticed that my wife was listening along, but sure that's right. Oh, we don't need a listen. So
We just wanted to do so.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chair,
Just put a quick note in, Diane, would you make sure we get an updated meeting schedule and all that, all media sources to the radio station. We've had some changes, everybody's agreed to some swaps, but I think now at the end of the year, we got pretty much everything shook out. Just make sure Todd and Marissa and Pioneer and everybody has our updated spectrum meetings and all of that.
I think that would be helpful, because I mean, looking at this, you got, several crossed out and filled in, and it's kind of hard to. So, if you clean that up. So. Management team. Oh, just had it, right?
Yep, that's my last one. I keep going cheers. You know.
Oh, thank you, Mayor Thompson, thanks, staff, and, we are adjourned.